The story kicks off in the freezing mountain ranges, the spot chosen by the 9 major sects for a meet-up with major about to go down vibes. Snowy rocks, several masters are booking it, showing just how crazy urgent this whole mess is. Distance, a young dude realizes that the Sword Emperor, the Blade Emperor, and the Spear Ghost, 3 absolute martial arts legends, are in the house. Straw Hat, he notices these squads came fully stacked to take on one seriously OP boss. Sing at his long-haired buddy, he says that even though their excuse is stopping a disaster, their real motives are super sus. Reddish aura oozes from the hairy dude, proving his power level is off the charts. Getting back to it, the hat guy complains about them running late, betting the target definitely won't survive today. Keeping his cool, the hairy guy asks if his buddy really buys that, reminding him the target already has big villain energy, and this ending was totally predictable. He brings up the terrifying foes he had to defeat, wondering if maybe those guys were the actual final bosses of the world. Twist is that his sword also took out society's idols, practically wiping out top-tier factions. Thanks to his hardcore actions, major sects had to shut down for 10 years after taking massive L's. The hat dude agrees the guy deserves to be sent to the lobby for hurting so many innocent NPCs. In the very next breath, he starts doubting if those victims were actually all that innocent. Staring at the pristine mountain, he cringes at the hypocrisy, realizing a clean skin doesn't mean a good vibe. Smash cut to a messy battle. Scarred zone, someone battered tries to get back up, totally confused about what's glitching. Shook by the wrecked map around him, he hears voices calling him the feared outcast. The sect leaders mock him, claiming he abandoned justice and honor while ignoring every rule they once defended. Exhausted and cornered, he is warned that his choices will bring serious consequences for challenging the martial world. His mind drifts back into the past, returning to peaceful afternoons when he read beside his wife in the town square. He remembers his daughter sleeping peacefully in his lap, during a time when their home felt safe and their lives seemed perfect. That gentle family memory briefly warms his heart before the peaceful vision slowly gives way to the difficult present. Everything changed when his wife passed unexpectedly after a mysterious illness, leaving him overwhelmed and alone afterward. Later, a terrible accident destroyed their home during a dispute involving several reckless martial artists. That awful disaster also separated him forever from his innocent young daughter. From then on, his only goal became accountability, confronting every corrupt fighter responsible, regardless of their status, connections, or clan. Sitting among the ruins around him, he feels defeated, knowing others dismiss his search for justice as obsession alone. Holding an amulet tightly, the hero finds it absurd that these leaders label him a heartless monster. Remembering his daughter's smile, he begins questioning the moral judgment of everyone condemning him so easily. Frustrated, he asks what his daughter ever did wrong, arguing that those leaders should answer for their own harmful choices. Standing his ground, the feared outcast faces the leaders who joined forces to corner him when he was weakest. One leader steps forward, asking whether he feels shame for the choices that brought them here. Without retreating, the warrior answers coldly that he only did what seemed necessary to confront corruption. While holding the damaged emblem at his side, he accuses the assembled leaders of being the true wrongdoers who deserve to face judgment. Zero chill left, he screams with all his might against their fake judgment. He exposes that those bloomers are hiding their own crimes and using him as a scapegoat while acting all holy. Demon's dark glare proves he's not taking this cat lying down. Warrior decides to skip the cutscene and suggests an allied attack, but gets warned to watch out for the enemy's ultimate mood. Reading their true motives, the MC realizes the squad just wants to capture him alive to steal his martial arts guide. He feels massive disgust seeing the greedy vibes hiding in those so-called legends. Super obvious their whole speech about honor and justice is just a flex to farm more power. King his blade, he accepts the challenge and decides to cancel their little theater production once and for all. Promising to send everyone there back to the lobby, a majestic golden aura pops off around him. His saved up buffs, the warrior drops a massive energy wave that blows the snow away. Zero time. He rushes in like a lightning bolt with absolute laser focus. Speedy and cracked hits his sword start slicing through the hypocrite leaders in his way. Fiery arc combo, the MC knocks the haters back with insane knockback damage. Stays standing surrounded by downed enemies, flexing that is not logging off without taking a squad with him. On the battlefield peaks while his sword drips after the massive strike. HP bar is flashing red with critical damage. He challenges the rest of the lobby to a one-on-one. Seeing the solo wipe, he just pulled off the big dude and the white-haired boomer switched to a way sweatier defense stance. The buff warrior spams insults and rushes in for an aggro push. Teaming up, the giant goes for a jump attack while the boomer swordsman tries a sneaky low sweep. In a crazy clash, the master's ultimate moves collide, mixing heavy fire and blue lightning into a massive explosion. Under all that pressure, the feared outcast surprises everyone by smirking, actually hyped for the brawl. Popping his golden aura, he manages to parry the attack and redirect the insane energy of the double strike. Shook by the ridiculous defense stats of a guy already on low health, the two masters backpedal. The stun lock window, the MC pushes them both away with the raw physical shockwave up into a high-speed combo exchange, swords clashing with crazy animations. Thanks to the massive recoil, the MC slides down the mountain, feeling his stamina hitting zero side. The giant holds his banged-up arm, admitting the enemy's god-tier art is no joke. His balance after sliding, the warrior admits those two aren't just cloud chasers. Their hype is real. Out of nowhere, a fresh speedy strike cuts the air from the side, almost catching him lacking. White-haired fighter thrusts his spear like a madman, forcing the MC to burn his last dodges. For some space, the feared outcast, barely sighed, steps a focused energy beam. In the snow, the spear guy gives props for the dodge, but warns the tutorial is over. Eyes practically glowing, the new challenger spins his spear at max speed, charging a finisher. Meteor shower of fire strikes the MC head-on, launching him forcefully into the rocks. Hiding in the smoke of his own ultimate, the spearman smirks, flexing way too much confidence. The warrior takes a powerful hit from a massive blue energy blast, catching a total stun lock with no parry window. Smoke clears. The hero lies exhausted on the icy ground as the spearmaster approaches slowly, while the weary warrior gathers whatever remaining energy he can still find inside himself now. The master stops directly before him, mocking the legendary feared outcast for appearing so completely exhausted today. Nice. He offers to spare the hero if he reveals the location of the hidden supreme manual within his damaged blade. The hero notes that his energy and stamina are completely depleted now. Despite the setback, he stares back defiantly, promising himself that this encounter will not become his final defeat. Startled by the rival's determination, the spearmaster pauses his next technique for one brief moment. The hero channels every remaining bit of energy into the damaged blade, accepting the serious risk to himself. An intense dark aura surrounds him immediately. Alarmed by that incredible power, the older masters realize the warrior plans one final overwhelming display before leaving. The spearmaster calls for everyone to interrupt the technique before its energy gathers. They react too late, and a colossal energy wave fills the area. The display lights the sky and surroundings. Within the glowing field, the feared outcast realizes his strength has finally reached its limit. Exhausted, he feels the energy fading and understands that this encounter will soon be ending. With no stamina remaining, he collapses slowly onto the freezing mountain ground. As he falls, he deeply regrets being unable to complete his difficult search for justice today. During those fading moments, he remembers his wife's gentle voice asking for forgiveness inside his mind again. He reaches toward the comforting memory of the person he cherished most. That imagined embrace gives him one brief moment of peace before everything around him slowly fades completely away. Just when he believes everything has ended, he suddenly feels a small hand holding his own. Little Soil calls anxiously for her father, still extremely dizzy. Oil opens his eyes while his excited daughter climbs happily across his bed nearby. His wife gently asks whether he is awake, while their happy daughter runs into her arms. Confused by everything happening, he slowly realizes that he returned to an earlier time, and seeing his family safe fills him with overwhelming relief and gratitude. From outside, he hears the gentle sounds of his daughter happily playing nearby. The peaceful scene shows the child wearing a flower crown her mother made for her. Even after several days, he still finds it incredibly difficult to believe this peaceful second chance is truly real. Remembering what happened on the mountain, he wonders whether he might somehow still be trapped inside some extremely convincing illusion. Then he realizes those rivals would never rely upon such a complicated trick. Connecting every clue, he accepts the only explanation that makes complete sense. The warrior finally understands that he returned to an earlier point in his life. Watching his daughter play, he knows this peaceful moment cannot remain unchanged forever. Smiling as his daughter runs toward him, Aleo quietly makes an important decision. Hugging his daughter, the father promises himself that he will prevent the tragedy completely. He knows he must move quickly to create a safe and peaceful future for both of them. Soon afterward, his wife gives him a bag of supplies for the journey he planned. Sensing her husband's worry, she understands his sudden silence and simply asks him to return home safely in one piece. Hearing her mother, the little girl asks whether she can join her father's journey. He promises to bring home delicious snacks if she behaves kindly and listens to her mother. Soil waves goodbye happily. She smiles. He leaves. He preserves one final memory of his beloved family before leaving home. His determination returns. Oiviel begins his difficult mission. Walking along the empty road, the warrior promises to surpass limits necessary to protect his family. His only problem is that his present body lacks the extraordinary strength he possessed much later. Without his former abilities, he understands that he is extremely vulnerable now. Standing before a dark cave entrance, he remembers exactly where the solution to his weakness waits. Moving through the rocky passage, he travels toward the deepest part of the cave, touching the cold floor. The hero remembers how he grew from an ordinary person into a legendary martial artist. Sitting there, he reviews the path that allowed him to conquer the martial world during his life. The key to his success was an inheritance left behind by the greatest warrior in history. Looking toward the ancient skeleton, he admits that discovering this place required incredible luck. Oilio once fled determined pursuers through a stormy night in desperation. Completely exhausted, he dragged himself through the mud while desperately searching for any possible route to safety. Frustrated by his weakness, he struck the earth after failing to keep his beloved family completely safe. His inability to find justice against those responsible for his daughter's disappearance consumed part of his attention and judgment. Although he eventually located the guildmaster responsible for attacking his village, Oilio remained an ordinary man and could not challenge his many trained followers. His followers quickly forced Oilio to retreat. During that desperate escape through the forest, he slipped beyond the familiar path and accidentally discovered his cave. He feels relieved that he remembers the location during this new life. He approaches the ancient remains, Curious, the warrior wonders whether the legendary inheritance will appear as it did during his life. As if answering him, a glowing golden sphere appears within the ancient skeleton's hands. The dark chamber becomes illuminated by the golden glow surrounding the mysterious object and its energy. The martial god's inheritance finally reveals itself before the hero. Looking closely, he marvels that inheritance has chosen him as its owner for the second time. Golden energy surrounds him, confirming that the legendary cultivation method is genuine and powerful. Without hesitation, the warrior reaches forward carefully to accept the waiting inheritance. Holding the golden core, he declares with confidence that this opportunity will allow him to rebuild his strength. Immediately, a bright aura surrounds him and begins transforming his body from within. Standing upright, he absorbs the mystical inheritance. As the powerful energy enters his body, he clenches his teeth and withstands the overwhelming pressure. Remembering that he endured this process before, he forces himself to remain focused through the intense strain, embracing the difficult transformation and calling upon his determination to protect his family. Far away, circling birds gather above a bleak and completely abandoned area below them. Standing among many fallen rivals, a sinister leader announces that the difficult stage has not begun. Behaving unpredictably, the villain claims darkness will soon spread across the entire martial world. He confidently prepares to release another huge wave of power across the surrounding area. In a flash, the leader's technique cuts through the surrounding air. The strike reaches a fallen rival, ending the scene with a display of the villain's nature. Oidiel suddenly opens his eyes and gasps. His body feels completely restored. Oidiel breathes slowly while regaining his remaining strength. Sitting inside the cave, he wonders how long he was unconscious before focusing carefully on the vivid vision he just experienced. The vision felt too detailed and realistic to be a simple dream. It revealed entirely new knowledge to him. Examining the ancient remains, the young warrior realizes he somehow witnessed memories belonging to the legendary martial god himself. Raising his hand, he senses stronger energy and knows for certain he has returned through time. Rising as a powerful aura surrounds him, the warrior realizes the divine inheritance has completely transformed and strengthened his physical body. In his previous life, he became remarkably strong at only the second cultivation level, but now he intends to advance much further and change everything this time. Breaking the serious mood, he suddenly notices grime covering him from head to toe. Discarding his damaged clothes, he jokes that repeating this entire transformation a second time feels much easier now. After packing his belongings, the warrior stands respectfully before the ancient master's remains and brings his hands together in gratitude and respect. He bows to the master whose inheritance has granted him another precious chance. Speaking sincerely, the warrior thanks the ancient master aloud for this priceless opportunity. He promises to use this power to protect his family and vows to help others if a similar chance ever appears again. Satisfied, he prepares to leave. He turns around and walks toward the cave's exit. Stepping into the sunlight, he feels a refreshing breeze move gently across his face. He decides this is the perfect moment to test his strength and body. Bending his knees, he channels energy into his legs and prepares to jump. The warrior rockets into the sky with an incredible leap that cracks the ground and sends dust everywhere. Moving incredibly fast, he glides above the trees like a bird over the forest. Crossing the mountains, he smiles with relief because he is finally returning to his family. Home, with determination, the devoted father races toward the people he loves more than anything. The peaceful forest suggests that his familiar village is already nearby. Landing smoothly among the trees, the warrior realizes that he remained unconscious inside the cave for 2 complete days already. He has lost time. He immediately starts running because his family needs him. Meanwhile, ordinary life continues peacefully throughout the small village near the forest. The warrior's wife walks happily through town while holding their daughter's hand and greeting friendly residents. Their warm reputation becomes obvious when an excited shopkeeper notices them and waves with a welcoming smile. A refined older woman stops to compliment them, calling the mother and daughter the village's most beautiful pair. The vendor greets them cheerfully, then wonders why the woman's husband is not accompanying his family. She offers the little girl a sweet treat on a stick. Focusing entirely on the delighted child, the girl smiles brightly and says, "Thank you very much." Her eyes sparkle as the child happily eats. Her mother also thanks the vendor warmly for the thoughtful kindness. The vendor asks about her husband and, learning that he is away, advises the family to return home earlier than usual. Confused, the wife asks why, and the woman explains that a dangerous local group may soon cause trouble throughout the village again. The scene shifts toward town. A collector confronts a villager while firmly demanding an unfair protection payment. Another member corners a man, claiming they only want payment while the victim objects to their completely unfair demands. Their leader becomes furious after the villagers call his group dishonest troublemakers. His patience disappears. The enormous leader steps forward angrily, making a serious threat against the frightened villager. The village elder panics as the confrontation continues growing worse. The elderly man quickly steps between them and promises that the village will provide the payment. He respectfully asks the towering leader to calm down and leave everyone alone. Enjoying his authority, the leader steps back and mockingly warns that his group will return later to demand additional payment again. The group leaves laughing, while the villagers remain shaken by the unpleasant encounter. Watching nearby, the warrior's wife grows worried and hopes her husband will avoid meeting those troubling men. Sensing the danger, the mother takes her daughter's hand and says they must return to their home without delay. A sudden rustle among the leaves catches their attention, and the excited daughter innocently asks whether her father has finally returned. Both stop on the dirt road and stare hopefully toward the empty path. Instead, one young traveler appears alone in the distance, walking steadily down the deserted road nearby. Hidden among the trees, the warrior observes every movement throughout the forest. The gang's leader tosses a bag of coins upward while celebrating their successful collection. Walking along the path, his followers praise their leader and boast about how easily they intimidated the peaceful village residents. Completely helpless, they discuss returning to seize the town's remaining wealth and forcing everyone to obey them. But their confident conversation suddenly stops when a cold voice behind them remarks that their plans sound very interesting to him. Startled, the three men immediately stop walking and turn around together. Seeing the young warrior blocking their path, the leader scowls and arrogantly demands to know his identity immediately. With a serious expression, the warrior gives them one opportunity to leave without trouble. He demands they return the coins, apologize, and promise never to threaten this village again, but the men simply laugh. They consider him ridiculous. The enormous leader releases a loud mocking laugh. He believes victory is certain. The leader steps closer and sarcastically asks when this village gained a defender. Poking the warrior's chest, he boasts that the younger man desperately needs someone else to rescue him instead. Without warning, the warrior delivers an uppercut with nearly invisible speed. Perfectly timed, the powerful strike overwhelms the giant before he can understand what has happened to him. No response possible. The leader flies backward and crashes into his followers. He hits ground. He collapses unconscious while his companion watches helplessly, frozen and stuttering. The follower cannot believe his leader fell. Enraged by the humiliation, another man draws his sword and charges. Leaping recklessly, he swings his blade at the warrior, who remains completely still and calmly watches him approach. Maintaining his cold expression, the warrior simply tightens one fist. At the opening, he strikes the attacker directly in the stomach. Looking at the fallen man, the warrior criticizes their performance. He reminds them that they ignored his generous warning, leaving the only conscious follower completely trembling as he realizes their terrible mistake. Inside his mind, the giant panics after realizing the stranger precisely struck critical points with impossible speed, while the warrior's frightening expression convinces him that resistance would be completely hopeless against such power. Shaking and defeated, the leader crawls backward while asking who this mysterious warrior is, and the young man immediately answers calmly. The warrior calmly says he is only the local teacher responsible for educating village children. The leader stiffens when he realizes that he alone remains conscious among his companions. Silenced, the warrior asks what the leader plans to do next. Immediately, the stolen bag of coins is returned and placed upon the dirt road. The elder and villagers watch in confusion as the gang leader suddenly kneels before the warrior for reasons they cannot possibly understand yet. Terrified, the giant begs for mercy and declares that he regrets his behavior. To prove his sincerity, he removes his equipment and offers everything to the warrior, creating an awkward moment for the elder. The bandit flees wearing almost nothing, insisting he returned the coins and promising never to enter this village again afterward. The villagers remain completely frozen along the road. They struggle in disbelief to understand everything they have just witnessed. Far away, the leader runs through the woods while insisting that he already fulfilled every demand the warrior made. He suddenly stops, looks back with intense fear, and wonders whether he is allowed to leave. The warrior blocks his escape and asks where he thinks he can run while still expecting to remain completely unharmed. The leader promises to leave the region, live honestly, and abandon his criminal behavior forever. Studying his response, the warrior repeats honest life with doubt. A heavy silence follows while the warrior considers everything the leader has said. The warrior asks whether someone like him can truly change, and the leader begins sweating when he realizes this stranger knows they abandoned an infamous and powerful organization long ago. The warrior remembers how this same group intimidated his village during his former life and forced residents into submission. He sadly recalls that authorities eventually stalked the bandits, but by then his home had already become ruins. The warrior declares that this criminal must finally answer for everything his group has done. Walking slowly toward the target, he explains with cold certainty that people like them never truly change their ways. Every escape route is gone. The giant's eyes widen as he understands that his chance has vanished. A fearsome aura fills the area as the leader realizes the warrior never intended to allow him to escape safely. The tense moment ends as the story returns to his daughter playing peacefully with stones. She suddenly looks up after hearing a familiar sound near the gate. Seeing her father return, she smiles brightly and calls his name across the yard. The child runs forward and embraces him tightly, while his relieved wife walks over to welcome him home. His wife asks what delayed him and admits she feels relieved to see that he returned safely home. The warrior apologizes to his daughter and claims that he needed extra time to help several students. His daughter adorably threatens to punish him if he returns late again, which reassures her mother that he avoided the trouble. Looking carefully at her husband, the wife notices that his appearance has changed in a positive way. She touches the warrior's face and asks how he suddenly became refreshed and handsome. Studying him closely beside their daughter, his wife notes that his body appears stronger and his shoulders broader. As his wife squeezes his cheeks, the warrior realizes he concealed his aura, but the physical transformation remains impossible to hide. He becomes awkward because he has no explanation. He invents excuses for his transformation. His voice wavers. His wife demands to know what really happened. Her voice becomes terrifying. The warrior sweats under questioning. He searches desperately for a convincing excuse to calm her. Luckily, his stomach growls loudly and interrupts the conversation. Meanwhile, his wife pauses in surprise at the unexpected sound nearby. Realizing he is genuinely exhausted, she abandons her stern expression and suddenly begins laughing warmly again. Laughing at the awkward moment, his wife asks whether he ate anything during his long journey home. She decides to stop questioning him and invites him inside to enjoy some warm and nourishing soup. Relieved, the warrior follows his family inside while praising the meal. He suddenly stalks in the yard when his senses detect a serious danger approaching nearby. Taking his wife's wrist, the warrior immediately uses spiritual energy to examine her condition very carefully. He discovers severe problems within her energy flow and becomes furious when he realizes these symptoms were deliberately caused rather than created by an ordinary illness or weakness. Later, the mother and daughter sleep peacefully together inside their quiet room. Standing beside the bed, the warrior watches his wife and remembers painful events from his former life. Remembering that she suffered these same symptoms before returning in time causes him emotional distress. Light surrounds his hands while the warrior channels healing energy, searching for the curse inside her. She groans under the strain while he confirms that someone secretly placed a curse inside her. He locates the strongest harmful energy near her core, proving that someone placed it there recently. Focused entirely on healing her, he increases his spiritual power and removes every trace of the curse. He moves his hands with extraordinary precision to ensure that none of her vital energy channels are disturbed. Her face becomes peaceful after the harmful energy leaves her body. Holding the strange energy in his hand, the warrior examines its glowing green appearance with care. His anger rises when he realizes it was designed to cause harm gradually over time. A troubling thought strikes him because he never discovered this danger during the events of his former life. Touching her face, he understands that her earlier collapse was never random. Someone had deliberately planned everything beforehand. The warrior remembers a rare substance from Penguin, meaning only an expert could have weakened her without attracting any immediate attention. With a determined glare, he vows to confront anyone who threatens his family's safety again. That day, his wife smiles and says she is taking their daughter to the market. Standing at the gate, the warrior wishes them well. His daughter promises that they will return soon. Watching them walk down the street, he decides it is time to confront their hidden observer. Among the trees, a suspicious man mutters in confusion because the curse suddenly vanished from his awareness. Watching from afar, he observes the wife at the market and assumes his first attempt used an insufficient amount. Moving secretly through woods, the stranger decides that a second attempt will complete his assignment. Suddenly, heavy footsteps approach and a confident voice announces that the person being sought has been found. Startled by the sudden voice, the stranger turns and sees the warrior in the shadows, calmly announcing his discovery. Wearing his cold expression, the warrior ignores the man's panic and says he has one question. Silence. The stranger panics internally because his senses completely fail to detect the warrior approaching him from behind. Recovering quickly, the stranger recognizes his target's husband and decides to distract him with deceptive claims. Without reacting, the warrior listens as the stranger lies that his wife secretly betrayed him with another mysterious man. Holding his weapons, the stranger prepares another move while promising to reveal who gave him the assignment. Rushing forward, the stranger attempts a decisive strike, mockingly claiming the warrior will learn the truth only after losing their confrontation against him that day. The warrior remains calm and easily stops the reckless charge. Perfect control, he redirects the movement and removes the stranger's weapon. The stranger becomes immobilized. He cannot believe his best technique failed instantly. Using the opening, the warrior lands one powerful strike against the surprised stranger. The overwhelming force sends the stranger flying backward through the forest uncontrollably. He collides with the tree and falls completely defeated upon the ground nearby afterward. The warrior slowly approaches the stranger. The husband demands to know who ordered the secret assignment. Trembling with fear, the stranger finally confesses that the oldest son of the Tang family arranged everything from the beginning. The warrior's expression darkens completely as he thinks about that cowardly young man's identity. The name Tang Gawei immediately appears within his mind. That man is known for hidden weapons and harmful techniques. Confused, the warrior asks why they targeted the Pen family's daughter and whether the stranger understands her history. The stranger reveals that everyone knows the young master has become obsessed with the warrior's wife. He explains that the Tang family tried arranging a marriage, but she escaped during the night with a scholar. Understanding the truth, the warrior realizes that his family had simply been escaping the Tang family's pressure. Ultimately, the wealthy family would never accept a poor and unknown scholar without any connections or social status. The stranger explains that her escape happened immediately after the proposal, so the young master blamed the scholar for destroying his plans. Understanding this petty reason, the warrior becomes furious over the complete disrespect shown toward his family. The stranger begs to remain unharmed because he already revealed all the information. Looking at the stranger, the husband sarcastically asks why he deserves freedom and whether fear of the Tang family should change anything at all. Trying to survive through intimidation, the stranger shouts that the Tang family will relentlessly pursue anyone who opposes them. He repeats their clan motto, claiming the Tang family always collect outstanding debts. In panic, the stranger insists that the warrior will face severe consequences if he refuses to release him. Ignoring the empty threats, the warrior moves instantly and grabs the stranger firmly by the face. His cold expression moves closer. He says that one final lesson remains before their difficult conversation can end. Everyone watches. The warrior warns that the only person who owes any debt here is the stranger himself. A tremendous wave of energy erupts. The warrior stops the stranger from threatening his wife again, lowering his arm after the confrontation. He finishes the task without feeling sympathy for the stranger. Standing within the woods, the father realizes he must travel directly to Szechuan and personally resolve the growing danger facing his family. The story moves to an elegant pavilion in Szechuan, revealing the enemy family's comfortable lifestyle as they drink among several guests. Tang Gaowei smirks while hearing compliments concerning his mood today. A guest asks why he seems excited, and he decides to share his secret, pouring another drink. The young master says he noticed a beautiful flower and wondered whether his excitement would fade. Looking into his cup, he pretends innocence and claims that he only wanted to learn more about the women. Thinking about the warrior's wife, he finally admits that he wanted to control her choices and make her miserable. Crushing an imaginary flower, he wonders what expression she would make after realizing that every path of escape had disappeared. Leaning backward, the heir complains that he did not claim her earlier, but remains certain his plan will eventually succeed. Smiling coldly, he says that he finally found her location and believes she deserves consequences for refusing his powerful family. He boasts about using a secret method to gradually weaken her without leaving any evidence behind, then abruptly stops a guest who tries to question his disturbing behavior. Utter coldness. He pressures the guest to describe the experience, treating her distress as a test for what he planned next. Fortunately, another voice interrupts, noting that the host appears unusually excited. Just as two intimidating elders enter the pavilion and complain about being delayed, the young master releases the guest, corrects his posture, and respectfully welcomes them both with a carefully practiced smile. Forcing a laugh, the young master says he was waiting for every guest to arrive and proposes a toast to this remarkable day. He invites them to sit, explaining that he wants to discuss future plans and celebrate his promotion as the family's leader. Although the heir secretly considers these elders beneath him and unworthy of respect, he knows they are ambitious men willing to do nearly anything for personal rewards and greater influence within the family. He demonstrates authority by offering seats. Gaowei believes nobody will challenge his decisions after today's gathering. Then he becomes irritated remembering how his half-brother blocked his departure while using their mother as an excuse before. Jealousy. He accused the younger brother of acting superior and deliberately looking down upon him. The polite young man attempted to respond but was immediately ordered to remain silent. Was Tang Mujin the most remarkable prodigy the family ever produced? Because of his extraordinary talent, he received all the praise and attention from the family's elders. Gaowei's jealousy intensified after their father vanished and a talented heir began controlling every family decision alone. Returning to the present, the young master ends his memory and proposes a toast to the victory he expects. The three men raise their glasses and celebrate the secret alliance they have formed together. Already overconfident, the heir celebrates as though he has become the family's leader. Suddenly, a tremendous noise destroys the door and leaves the arrogant host staring in shock. The broken entrance collapses while several guards tumble into the room like scattered objects. The sudden crash frightens the guests, while Gaowei appears confused by this unexpected intrusion. One experienced elder surveys the room and calmly observes that the young master has received an unexpected visitor. Furious, the host rises, points forward, and demands to know who would dare enter his private residence without any permission whatsoever. Emerging from the shadows, the warrior adjusts his mask and says he expected them to be disgraceful, but their behavior is even worse. Trying to remain calm, the heir laughs sarcastically and assumes that the intruder must recognize his family's reputation. With a cold stare, the warrior agrees and calls him the clan's most embarrassing representative. His pride challenged, the heir shouts angrily, while an elderly guest rises and warns that the intruder selected a terrible day to arrive there. The older man steps forward and offers to handle the visitor during their celebration personally. Approaching the warrior, the two intimidating elders act confidently and say they may forgive his intrusion if he kneels and sincerely apologizes immediately. The warrior tilts his head and firmly refuses their offer. Finding his refusal amusing, the enormous elder laughs and claims that the visitor seems eager to experience defeat. Raising his heavy arm, the elder spins an iron ball attached to a chain at tremendous speed, then advances while promising to humble the confident young visitor before everyone gathered nearby today. The heavy weapon rushes through the air toward the warrior, displaying the strength of the two experienced fighters. The iron ball travels directly toward the warrior with astonishing force. It strikes the floor and raises a dust cloud. The wooden floor breaks beneath the impact, damaging the room as the elder pulls back his chain. The bald elder smirks and mocks the warrior for avoiding it. His spirited companion agrees that the young man's evasive movement was surprisingly impressive. In an instant, the warrior leaps with astonishing agility to avoid their coordinated attack completely. The elder's eyes widen after seeing the visitor's movement speed. Using the opening while airborne, the warrior lands precise strike, announcing that his first opponent is defeated. The elder falls to the floor before finding any opportunity to defend himself. Defeated, the older fighter groans quietly before losing awareness of the room. Deeply shocked, the other brother shouts while the warrior lands calmly on the wooden floor before him. With an icy expression, the young warrior turns and explains that even powerful people become emotional whenever their family is directly threatened. Overcome by anger, the elder grits his teeth as bitter resentment controls his actions. Losing control, he repeatedly spins his chain and angrily challenges the young intruder. He vows to defeat the warrior for embarrassing his companion, then fills the room with a rapid series of attacks from every direction. Calmness, the warrior calmly steps around the iron ball with precise timing. Frustrated after missing repeatedly, the elder grits his teeth and desperately tries to make contact. Shouting loudly, he continues directing heavy attacks toward the calm warrior. Watching from behind, the heir cannot understand how the veteran elder keeps missing every move against the intruder. The elder's attributes are impressive, but he freezes after recognizing his opponent. Perfect. Observe every movement. Realizing the danger is overwhelming, the coward decides to retreat from the room without delay. His escape fails when the warrior catches the enormous iron weapon using only one hand. While airborne, the elder pulls the chain with all his strength, but the weapon remains fixed in the warrior's grip. The hired fighter realizes his strength is exhausted and that he has already lost this duel. Refusing to accept defeat, the older mercenary asks how an unknown youngster defeated him easily. Pulling the weapon, Duel says his critical mistake was treating other people's lives as worthless. Holding firm, the warrior prepares his final decisive counterattack. Using the elder's own iron ball, he sends it back with overwhelming force. Without time to react, the mercenary receives the powerful blow directly against his face. His face shows pure horror as he realizes the confrontation is over. The last fighter collapses heavily, permanently removing the mercenary threat from the room. With both guards defeated, the warrior focuses upon their arrogant leader. Speaking calmly, he apologizes for the delay and watches as the frightened host begins sweating before him. Unable to understand how his elite guards fell so quickly, the heir realizes that the intruder defeated two legendary mercenaries like inexperienced beginners in battle. The heir gulps, realizing he faces an exceptionally powerful opponent. He desperately believes the young man's power may equal the Tang family's patriarch. Trying to save himself, the villain asks how much money the warrior received, but only hears an unclear reply from him. He offers twice the payment to hire him, but the warrior completely dismisses the proposal as an enormous joke. Desperate, the heir raises 3 fingers and promises to provide any amount of wealth in exchange for mercy. Stepping forward, Yule reveals that he is actually the person who placed the bounty upon him. His mind returns to the tragic memory of his wife struggling beneath the mysterious curse affecting her. Staring at the villain, the warrior darkly explains that the person seeking him is his own future self. After a moment of stunned silence, the heir finally understands when he remembers the hidden curse plot. Remembering the beautiful wife, the coward realizes this stranger is the husband he despises most. Stuttering, he asks for the intruder's name and hears confirmation of his worst fears. His fear becomes wild laughter when he realizes the powerful stranger is merely the impoverished scholar from his distant past. He cannot believe that such an insignificant man entered his home and caused this much destruction alone. Ignoring the villain's useless mockery, the warrior advances. Suddenly, he appears before the coward. Exactly right there, guards enter the room, searching for their future leader. Surrounding the warrior, they tell the young master to escape through the nearest passage. The villain mutters that these guards will be defeated by the intruder within 5 seconds at most. An evil smile appears as the coward secretly prepares an exceptionally underhanded strategy. His curse, he decides to use his own guards as a protective barrier. A completely disgraceful decision. He releases an immense cloud around the guards who are trying to protect him from danger. The curse erupts. Purple energy spreads throughout the room, filling the space with dangerous mist. Suddenly, the guards scream as the spreading curse rapidly drains all their remaining strength. Lying on the floor, a weakened guard cannot understand why his own leader deliberately turned the attack against them. The young master laughs, boasting that nobody can withstand his prepared curse. His excitement instantly disappears when he sees something that should be impossible. Within the purple smoke, the warrior stands unharmed, protected by a brilliant golden aura while holding one arm firmly before his body without concern. The warrior releases pure energy to cleanse the room of curses. The blast removes the curse cloud, ending the technique with a thunderous boom. Without a secret weapon, the coward retreats in panic, realizing he is cornered, while the warrior crosses the floor and sarcastically asks what that weak attempt was supposed to accomplish. Disgusted, the warrior declares that the villain deserves no mercy and should consider himself extremely fortunate. A memory shows that he personally defeated those elders for their serious offenses during his previous life. Returning to the present, he says the heir would ignore every offense merely to control the Szechuan territory. Overwhelmed by fear, the villain kneels, crying and desperately begging the warrior to spare him immediately. His fingers glow. Yule says he finally understands why the villain hated his wife so deeply. No mercy, he releases energy beams that permanently disable the coward's important abilities. The heir screams as his internal energy channels are disabled as punishment for his actions. The repeated strikes completely remove the villain's ability to ever wield any weapon again. Afterward, the warrior's serious expression confirms that he made the correct decision. Suddenly, a swift strike emerges from the shadows, forcing the warrior to immediately block it with his energy blade. A masked man lands beside the villain, claiming that the warrior has treated the coward too severely. The masked man tells the warrior that this coward is the clan's heir and deserves a reply. The masked man prepares himself for a serious duel. Immediately, he attacks with precision, a perfect technique. A massive wave fills the room when the masked fighter unleashes his powerful technique. Yule barely steps aside. The warrior narrows his eyes, carefully observing every detail of his opponent's fighting style. Only a small dagger, he perfectly blocks the strike. The duel accelerates into a furious exchange, with both blades sparking at astonishing speed. The energy from the colliding weapons forces both fighters backward quickly. The warrior slides across the floor while attempting to recover his stance. Calmly, Yule remains standing at the center of the damaged room. The fighting style belongs to Tang Mugen, the clan's greatest prodigy. Privately, he admits that although he dislikes conventional heroes, he always respected this young man's remarkable abilities throughout his former life. A memory from his feared outcast day shows how the youngster's kindness gave him temporary peace. He finds it deeply ironic to encounter the territory's kindest hero in the middle of this chaotic confrontation. Alert, the warrior prepares for the masked man's next combination as hidden projectiles fly toward him, forcing him to perform several difficult evasive movements. Brave, Mugen cannot believe that his opponent avoids every attack throughout the sequence. He begins panicking, believing that the warrior has concealed his true power level. The masked man launches another aggressive charge. The warrior counters using green wind. Seeing an opening, Yule leaps while surrounded by golden energy. He avoids the expanding energy that damages the surrounding floor. From above, the warrior applies overwhelming pressure with one descending strike. The prodigy crosses his arms just before impact, blocking the strike without suffering its complete force. Trying to reverse their positions, he aims one strike directly toward Yule's chest. Yule casually spins, avoiding the enemy's blade as though it were nothing. Completing his combination, the warrior lands a heavy kick that sends the masked man across the room, then smiles because the youngster's true strength matches precisely what he had predicted. On the floor, Mugen becomes frustrated that he cannot even challenge his warrior's defenses. Without hesitation, Yule charges forward while his golden aura remains active. The warrior's incredible movement speed briefly overwhelms the young prodigy's vision. The sudden maneuver makes the prodigy shout. The overwhelming force sends the masked fighter backward across the room. The youngster's defense shatters completely, scattering both his weapons aside. The warrior appears behind him like a ghost and places the fighter in the neck hole. The prodigy understands he is trapped and accepts his defeat. After he surrenders, the warrior slowly lowers his weapon. Confused, the youngster asks why the warrior did not simply finish their confrontation. Walking across the room, the warrior coldly explains the young man was never his target. After leaving the fight, the masked man asks whether his justice mission is still necessary, but Yule stops him, explains that the villain is powerless, and says the family elders will investigate everything. He says there is no need to confront him anymore, completely freezing Mugen. His eyes darken as he admits that one final task still remains unfinished. Gathering energy in his hand, he says they cannot risk the villain ever recovering his strength again. What happens? The prodigy screams and begs him to stop, but the warrior releases a powerful energy beam directly toward the fallen villain below. The floorboards break beneath the overwhelming energy released by the impact. The villain is completely overwhelmed by the energy and screams as his physical abilities are permanently disabled thereafter. Holding the villain's shoulders, Yule sarcastically apologizes to the defeated man while closing several of his essential energy channels. The villain loses consciousness, completely overwhelmed because the energy restriction has now become too severe. Mugen nervously asks whether such an extreme response was truly necessary. Without regret, the father agrees, then explains that he has one question remaining for Mugen. He challenges the prodigy's false concern, saying Mugen merely pretended to oppose his brother's disgraceful behavior in public. He says the youngster never truly wanted to oppose his family and remained a silent observer. The warrior concludes that watching his brother lose everything is his consequence for quietly enabling everything before. Silenced, the tank prodigy sits without speaking, absorbs that harsh reality, then watches the warrior leave while remaining confused and shaken. He cannot understand what kind of powerful opponent just appeared. Smoke clears from the damaged room, ending the night when one powerful warrior completely overwhelmed the entire family alone. Walking quickly through the dark mountains, the warrior begins returning toward his home. His promise is to use this second life protecting those he loves. Doubt appears as he remembers the extreme strategy he just used and wonders whether protecting his wife truly required him to become completely relentless against opponents standing in his path. Remembering her condition convinces him that his journey into Szechuan had become completely justified. Clenching his fists, he wonders what additional challenges must be resolved before his family can finally live peacefully. After an uneventful journey home, he safely arrives within his quiet backyard. Opening the door, his wife awakens in darkness and notices him entering their home. Sitting beside a bed, Yule apologizes for waking her and asks whether they can have a brief private conversation together outside. Smiling softly, she agrees, gently past their child, and rises from the bed quietly. They enter the garden to speak privately beneath the night sky. Holding herself against the cold, his wife admits this unexpected late meeting has made her anxious. Her worried eyes meet his, showing she feels genuinely concerned. Breaking the silence, Yule holds her shoulders and suggests they should return to her family. They should return home. She remains completely silent as cold wind moves through trees. Seriously, the warrior admits that revealing this plan now must sound unbelievable. Completely surprised by the proposal, the woman raises both hands and stares at him in shock. Confused, she asks whether they should truly return to that distant place. She repeats the territory's name, unable to understand his unexpected suggestion. Holding her husband's arms, she refuses, claiming that her father would never forgive her for abandoning the family. He understands the family leader might not forgive her easily, but gently calls her name again. She argues that her father likely rejected her completely and asks how her husband could possibly feel so certain now. Sadly, she says she has only brought shame upon the family and assumes her father has removed her from his memory. Holding her hands gently, the warrior whispers that she should listen carefully to his explanation. He admits that he once believed the same, knowing her father completely opposed their relationship from the very beginning. He believed the older man would never forgive their sudden escape and marriage. Everything changed when his father-in-law suddenly arrived in their village shortly after she was weakened by that mysterious curse. The powerful leader collapsed emotionally upon seeing his unconscious daughter and cried uncontrollably beside her. The memory shows the family leader crying heavily while holding his unconscious daughter. He begged for forgiveness, admitted his own greed caused their problems, and accepted responsibility for his granddaughter's difficult situation. The older man pleaded for permission to raise his granddaughter safely at the family residence again. The warrior refused the invitation, held his daughter, and promised to raise her himself while remembering the moment. The warrior admits he immediately regretted that stubborn decision. Holding his wife's hand, he says he promised to avoid making selfish decisions in his life. Absolute determination. Yule explains that they need the Penn family's reliable protection. The father asks her to consider their daughter and whether they can ever live peacefully without a truly secure home. Staring at the ground, his discouraged wife remains quiet, burdened by guilt over her past decisions. Moving closer, he admits her father is probably angry, but explains that something important has changed since then. Bringing her hand against his chest, the husband promises that every father maintains an unbreakable bond. Reassured by his gentle words, she looks upward and begins accepting his thoughtful advice completely. Trying to improve her mood, Yule jokes that her father never considered him a family member anyway, which finally makes her laugh. Holding her tightly, the warrior asks her to trust his judgment and promises that everything will succeed. Beneath the moon illuminating their quiet village, they finally decide that their small family will return together to the ancestral clan. The next morning feels peaceful, with birds singing above the small houses, while their daughter carefully places wet ink upon a brush with absolute concentration, then moves the bottle quietly so nobody awakens before their playful plan begins that morning. Working together, the mother helps their daughter playfully draw decorations across the sleeping warrior's face. Slowly, the warrior opens one eye, noticing their suspicious behavior. He asks what they are doing, while his wife hides the brush and smiles innocently back. Pushing her husband backward, she tells him to rise and enjoy the excellent breakfast waiting nearby. His face covered in ink, he sits beside the table, saying he slept wonderfully because their family will return home. The table holds abundant food, and his wife explains that she prepared all the remaining items. Trying not to laugh, the mother and daughter hold their breath when the husband sits, finding their behavior suspicious. The mother finally laughs after seeing the drawings across his face, tells him to wash them away, admits their playful trick, and leaves. The two of them share a warm, joyful laugh. Washing his face outside, Yule notices the black water, understands their jolt, and hears his daughter apologize afterward. Bright, pleasant weather fills the peaceful village on the morning when the family says goodbye. The villagers are surprised their respected teacher plans to leave the village so soon. The warrior apologizes for leaving while an elderly woman asks why they cannot remain longer. The village elder agrees, explaining that their home is now peaceful without the former bandits. A gentle smile, the leader says everyone appreciates them and wishes their family a completely safe journey. Touching his daughter's shoulder, the father encourages her to say goodbye to kind people gathered nearby. The adorable child bows respectfully and waves farewell to the crowd filling the square. The family begins walking away, leaving the village while appreciating every warm smile from the residents. As the distance grows, the warrior quietly remembers that life there included the happiest moments of his past. Holding his wife and child's hands, he promises to return immediately if ever anyone in village requests assistance. A brilliant sunset closes the village chapter and marks the beginning of the family's important new journey together. Far away, powerful officials inside the enormous family fortress hold an intense meeting concerning the alliance's latest demands. One advisor argues that the family must never surrender authority to outsiders without thorough discussion. Losing patience with the prolonged discussion, the patriarch strikes the table and orders everyone to remain completely silent. Looking imposing, the patriarch stares at his son and asks him to share his opinion about the issue. The young heir calmly recommends acceptance because managing foreign relations remains one of clan's responsibilities. An older advisor warns that acceptance may cause future problems, but the young heir explains that those risks make cooperation more important. The heir explains that accepting the agreement prevents the alliance from using it as leverage against them in the future. Impressed by the intelligent response, the patriarch praises his son's strategic judgment. An elderly advisor observes the heir's excellent conduct and believes the young man was born to successfully leave family eventually. The door suddenly opens, revealing an exhausted messenger. The messenger announces an emergency, and the patriarch orders him to explain everything while the frightened servant struggles to talk clearly. Gathering courage, the servant nervously reveals the missing daughter's identity, surprising the young heir beyond expectations. Everyone becomes silent when the servant announces the daughter's return. The patriarch rises abruptly, crushing the armrest beneath his powerful grip. The patriarch feels the enormous emotional impact of that news within his chest. In disbelief, the leader stands, stares at the servant, and demands that he repeat the unexpected announcement again. Meanwhile, inside the opposing clan losing all its main residents, the atmosphere within the private room feels incredibly tense. Covered with battle scars, the family leader coldly discusses his cowardly son's recent complete failure. Wearing formal robes, the rival patriarch criticizes an advisor for failing to properly train the heir. Pacing across the room, He explains that he returned only because a stranger embarrassed his son, then laughs about the intrusion. A servant says their trackers are searching, but the patriarch interrupts and reminds him that he defeated legendary fighters. A calculating expression. The patriarch explains that pursuing the stranger through ordinary methods would be an enormous mistake. Back inside the damaged residence, a servant asks whether the patriarch will respond to the attack against their family directly. Walking with his hands behind him, the patriarch declares that his family always settles every debt, regardless of outcome. He decides the family must first learn better judgment before they pursue any further confrontation. Returning to the family fortress, the door opens and reveals that the expected visitors have already arrived. The warrior, his wife, and their daughter wait nervously upon elegant couches inside the family residence. The woman looks completely astonished when someone enters and calls her name. Xiao Jin greets his sister formally and asks about her health. Overjoyed, she calls her brother's name and rushes forward to share a warm hug, praising his growth while he says she appears to be living well. Her husband respectfully calls him brother-in-law and asks whether he is healthy. The young man looks down and notices a tiny child standing beside them, surprised by her cuteness. His sister happily introduces the girl as his niece. Little Soil pauses before calling him uncle in the sweetest voice. Xiao Jin becomes speechless, completely overwhelmed by her innocent charm. He eagerly asks to hold the child, which her mother immediately allows, and becomes deeply emotional when matriarch Dan Yang runs into the room calling for her daughter after years spent waiting for this reunion. Yan falls silent when her mother hugs her tightly and asks why she disappeared without warning. Filled with regret, the woman apologizes to her mother for leaving so suddenly without explanation. Resting in her uncle's arms, Soil innocently asks why her mother is crying today again. Yan tries to remain calm through her tears while her mother notices the small child quietly watching nearby. Yan asks her daughter to greet her grandmother, and the older woman immediately adores the charming little girl standing before her. Smiling warmly, the grandmother gently pats her grandchild's head affectionately. She says the child looks exactly like her daughter did when she was young years ago. Then the grandmother notices her daughter's husband waiting quietly in the background, and he realizes that his difficult conversation has finally arrived today. Yule steps forward and bows respectfully. He apologizes for their long absence and accepts full responsibility for every difficult consequence alone. His wife quickly intervenes, asking her father not to blame her husband. She explains that they deliberately left together because they loved each other and wanted freedom for themselves. Calming down, her mother tells Yule to recover from his journey, earning his sincere and grateful thanks immediately. The peaceful mood instantly disappears when a powerful voice announces that nobody will receive a friendly welcome. Pen Yugang, the intimidating leader of the family, enters the room with a furious expression and unwavering posture. The warrior meets his gaze directly and respectfully calls him father-in-law. Ignoring Yule, the older man mocks his poor clothing and asks whether he has achieved anything since leaving with his daughter. Yan thanks her husband for speaking up and asks father why he remains angry. She says she abandoned her privileged family life to build a humble home independently and face every hardship herself without their help. Despite every hardship, she treasured each moment of freedom and happily chose her own path there. Her father rejects that explanation, accusing his daughter of pretending innocence while insulting his decisions openly. He claims her departure humiliated their family across the region, while her mother tries to calm everyone. He silences his wife and firmly demands that his daughter explain the true reason for returning home now. Exhausted by the argument, the matriarch releases a thunderous shout that silences the entire room instantly. The leader swallows his pride and steps backward, startled by his wife's sudden display of authority inside. She scolds him and asks why he keeps spreading false stories publicly. She reveals that he spent months privately missing his daughter, embarrassing the reunited couple while Yule awkwardly coughs and quietly looks away. Embarrassed by their public argument, Yan blushes and asks her parents to stop shouting, trying to change the subject. The patriarch pretends confusion and asks about his unexpected granddaughter beside them. Taking advantage of the opening, her uncle turns the child toward her grandfather and encourages a respectful greeting. The little girl turns her bright face toward the elder and sweetly calls him grandfather. Her innocent greeting overwhelms the proud clan leader as she waits beside him with a cheerful smile. Captivated by her cheerful expression, the elder moves back in surprise and wonders what blessing has entered his home today. She repeats grandfather softly, and the gentle sound instantly breaks through every trace of the man's severity. His wife realizes he wants to embrace the child and teases him gently, prompting an awkward cough that reveals his embarrassment. All remaining sternness vanishes when he raises the child, turns her carefully, and fills the chamber with delighted laughter. Afterward, tranquility settles over the family's secluded residence inside the clan fortress once again. In a secluded chamber, the patriarch privately meets with his returning relative. While sipping tea, the patriarch tells the younger man to hear every word and respond without objections. He remembers when his daughter revealed her devotion and admits her unexpected decision left him deeply disappointed. Speaking honestly, the elder says he never expected his daughter to leave a powerful household for a humble scholar. Looking back, he confesses that he intended to retrieve her regardless of every protest she made. Yet the happiness shining on his daughter's face beside her husband revealed a joy the patriarch had never witnessed before. Placing his cup aside, he says that he granted his approval but never imagined the family would return here. Setting aside all pride, the younger man offers a respectful bow and promises to resolve their former disagreements. Quiet, the patriarch questions whether his guest regrets that choice. Without wavering, the husband says his wife and daughter are his entire world, and he would follow the identical path again without even a moment of doubt whatsoever. Surprised by such certainty, the elder asks why an apology was necessary and learns their unannounced arrival caused complications here. The husband insists his wife deserves reconciliation while the patriarch observes the younger man's transformation. Resolutely, the husband vows to care for his household and requests permission for everyone to remain. Studying him carefully, the patriarch wonders how this once timid scholar gained such confidence, discipline, and power. Despite his curiosity, the elder remains stern. A quiet grunt conceals the leader's growing respect for the determined scholar before him. In his mind, welcoming them back is simple enough. Living peacefully among the clan members will prove much harder. The patriarch grants the family permission to remain safely inside the fortress from that moment onward. Relieved, the husband expresses gratitude, although the elder warns that proud relatives may look down upon a quiet outsider joining their ancient household ranks. Undaunted, the scholar accepts that morning and declares he can overcome challenges awaiting him there. At sunrise, light spreads across the immense family estate resting among rolling green hills and peaceful mountain scenery. Nearby, a secluded cave serves as the location for his cultivation practice. Fresh marks covering nearby stumps reveal the intensity of his training sessions. Within the cave, the scholar sits alone while spiritual energy circulates throughout his body. Opening his eyes, he observes that 30 days have passed since everyone returned home safely. His advancement, the cultivator feels satisfied because his abilities exceed the achievements he accomplished during his lifetime. For now, he chooses to keep the scale of his abilities hidden from every clan member. Looking toward the towering fortress, he resolves to train continually until he possesses enough strength to safeguard his household forever. Across the dusty training yard, many warriors perform exhausting martial drills together beneath the sun. Observing the practice, one fighter complains about the arrogant outsider who constantly passes through the courtyard with self-confidence. Several warriors quietly create a dishonest scheme to humiliate the newcomer. Their watchful captain notices the gathering. He approaches and asks why everyone sounds angry. The soldiers confirm their frustration and request a challenge that will prove outsiders have no value within clan. Accepting the suggestion, the captain decides they should subject Yule to a traditional clan exercise immediately. Farther down the path, Yule walks peacefully while enjoying the pleasant weather surrounding the fortress. Hiding his intentions, the captain invites Yule to exercise with the strongest warriors and relax after studying all morning. The conspirators privately hope he accepts, expecting his endurance to fail so completely that he cannot finish their exercise. Unaware of their plan, Yule happily accepts and agrees to meet everyone early tomorrow. The husband waves goodbye and continues walking through the quiet fortress. Remaining behind, the captain smiles suspiciously, believing the planned exercise will become impossibly difficult for the unsuspecting newcomer. Unaware of their motives, Yule approaches the main gates early and finds the warriors gathered together, quietly predicting that he will quit. With arms crossed, Ilbong warns that avoiding the exercise will bring punishment for taking away the clan leader's cherished daughter. He asks what happens if Yule never arrives, but another soldier announces that the scholar has appeared. Looking completely calm, Yule approaches the circle of warriors waiting together inside a dusty courtyard nearby. He politely asks whether he missed their meeting and receives a brief answer that he arrived on time. Noticing several unfamiliar warriors, Yule asks who they are and learns that the captains are conducting a demanding endurance test for everyone. Confident that the scholar will struggle, Ilbong loudly orders everyone to begin the exercise. The squad quickly forms a straight line while the captain establishes a punishing pace. Expecting Yule to fall far behind, they run together across the courtyard at a relentless pace. Removing their outer shirts, the warriors increase their speed to challenge everyone participating in the exercise. The formation. The captain looks sideways to inspect the exhausted condition he expects Yule to display already. Instead, Yule has not lost any visible energy yet. Realizing the scholar possesses remarkable endurance, the captain forces a smile and assumes the flat ground was too easy, but the approaching mountain will finally exhaust him completely today. The path climbs a powerful cliff that quickly exhausts even the clan's most experienced warriors. Climbing the steep trail, the warriors begin gasping for air as sweat covers them during the demanding ascent. The pace drains everyone's energy, causing weaker warriors to beg for a brief rest. To everyone's surprise, Yule casually passes the struggling warriors without difficulty, leaving the group completely stunned behind him. He continues climbing as though enjoying a peaceful walk, making everyone question the supposedly weak scholar's extraordinary physical abilities. Covered in sweat, the captain stares in disbelief when the newcomer reaches the front of his experienced group. His mind goes blank when Yule stands beside him while breathing completely normally nearby. After completing the grueling march, they return to level ground, but the captain suddenly orders everyone to stop. Furious that his scheme failed, Ilbong ignores the exhausted warriors and orders everyone to repeat the entire course immediately. The squad panics at the unreasonable order while the captain silently resents Yule's seemingly limitless endurance throughout the demanding exercise. They begin running again, and growing exhaustion spreads through the group until several soldiers collapse completely. Even the captain becomes overwhelmed and falls behind. Unable to maintain his proud and confident posture, the courtyard becomes filled with exhausted warriors lying on the ground and begging for the punishing exercise to finally end. Yule remains refreshed. He complains that the exercise ended too quickly and tells everyone to gather again early tomorrow. The warriors stare after him as he departs, feeling complete disbelief and concern. Keeping his promise, Yule arrives early the next morning with the same extraordinary endurance he displayed the previous day. From that day onward, Scenes of Yule casually jogging while leading groups of exhausted warriors become a familiar daily sight throughout the clan. The problem is his relentless pace every morning, which forces the warriors to repeatedly beg him for a slower daily routine. Yule denies their complaints with a quiet laugh while his reputation as an intimidating instructor grows throughout the fortress. The next day, Yan notices Yule has developed stronger muscles and remarkable endurance recently. Soil happily enjoys her sweets. He avoids explaining everything, claiming that he exercises privately during his free time. Facing the wind, the warrior admits returning was difficult, but he now genuinely enjoys living within the estate. Several ordinary residents continue spreading inaccurate stories about him publicly. He forgives them and ignores every rumor. Memories of his lonely former life return, filled with isolation and no relatives joining him for dinner. His current home feels like a paradise compared with the loneliness of his previous life. The evening sun colors the town square, signaling that the local shops will soon close. Inside the city, grateful street vendors praise Jin for protecting the outer walls and keeping their neighborhood peaceful and secure. The young man insists he merely completed his ordinary duties to protect them. The residents warmly thank him as he continues walking toward home. That night, the prodigy speaks with the servant while preparing to leave the quiet town soon. The young leader mentions his family duties and expresses excitement about seeing his charming niece again inside the fortress. Suddenly, he stops walking after sensing an intense and unfamiliar presence approaching from nearby. The sound of a footstep crushing a leaf abruptly breaks the quiet atmosphere within the dark forest. Without warning, masked attackers launch several projectiles toward the young leader's group from the trees. Drawing his blade quickly, the leader assumes a defensive stance and scans the surrounding area. The road erupts into confusion as clan guards struggle against the masked opponent's rapid and coordinated attacks. During the exchange, the leader orders his guard to withdraw immediately and request support from the fortress. Following the order, the guard races through the brush, urgently seeking assistance from the fortress. During the confrontation, the prodigy receives a powerful strike and questions how the opponents achieved such unexpected luck. During this unfair ambush, separated from his companions, the exhausted guard runs up the enormous stairs leading toward the clan's fortress for help. The pursuers accelerate, confidently believing their plan will certainly succeed before sunrise. Ignoring exhaustion, the young heir notices the unfair pursuit and becomes concerned for his weakened servant. One attacker leaps through the air while aiming several blades toward the fleeing servant's most vulnerable position. The attacker's plan fails about the bridge when Yule suddenly intercepts the group and delivers a cold warning about the enormous mistake they made inside his protected territory. The area erupts into chaos as the leader searches for escape. After checking his weakened condition near the empty ravine, the prodigy realizes his usual route is completely blocked by the surrounding armed opponents waiting nearby. Holding his blade firmly, he calculates whether attempting a dangerous strategy is worth the risk right now. Running out of options, the prodigy leaps from the cliff, preferring the dangerous fall over immediate capture by the surrounding enemy group. Surprised by the reckless choice, the attackers gather at the edge, completely shocked that he actually jumped into the ravine. Frustrated about losing their target, one attacker aims into the dark ravine but completely misses a attempt. Falling rapidly toward the forest floor, the prodigy senses the approaching impact and cries out as the force overwhelms his entire body below. Knowing his risky escape succeeded, the prodigy accepts the difficult outcome and feels relieved that the mercenaries cannot capture him now. Seconds later, alarming news reaches the main fortress when merchants deliver the young leader's badly damaged belongings and report that every nearby route is blocked. During an urgent family meeting, the elder angrily reports that the young heir disappeared in the forest and demands an immediate search. The room becomes chaotic as everyone debates the limited information, but they remain hopeful that he survived by hiding inside a cave overnight. One front member orders everyone to become silent, stop arguing, and focus only on collecting reliable information for the urgent search effort ahead immediately. Taking control of the meeting, the patriarch ends every useless argument and assigns all available fighters to search the forest for the missing heir. Unaware of the growing emergency, Yule's wife gently rubs his back and suggests resting for the night, but he concentrates his energy to ease her worry and stress. Watching his posture, the anxious woman reveals her fear about the heir's belongings discovered along the dark mountain paths. Running his hand gently through her hair, he comforts her while his mind rapidly reviews every important detail from his previous life. Calculating carefully, he checks the current time and identifies the exact moment when this mysterious disappearance originally occurred before. He remembers that the incident frightened the entire region during his previous life. While rumors spread among rival families that a leading heir had disappeared, he remembers the heir eventually returning with a weakened arm, leaving lasting emotional distress throughout the family after suffering severe treatment from the hostile mercenaries during captivity. Remembering his past, Yule respects the young heir's strong sense of honor and recalls the important assistance he once received before enemies changed everything for them. Motivated by that gratitude, he accepts a solitary mission to defend the heir's location, protect his body, and rescue him from the mercenary group's relentless control inside the distant forest tonight. Inside a remote cave, the mercenary leader angrily asks whether anyone could have actually survived such a dangerous fall from that high cliff nearby. One attacker admits they failed their mission and praises the prodigy's remarkable movement and excellent sword abilities. Furious, the leader warns that a powerful client expects every promised item from the secret marketplace without losing a single payment because of their failed forest mission during the previous night. Another officer reminds everyone that mercenary groups face serious consequences when they challenge one of the region's 5 influential families without a plan. Holding an expensive item, the client says he pays generously only for flawless victories and expects complete proof displayed upon their returning weapons. At the mention of payment, the mercenary promises to return quickly with the requested evidence and satisfy the corrupt official completely. Moving rapidly through the air above elegant rooftops late at night, the scout searches across the distant landscape for valuable clues. Inside the protected region's quiet and rocky countryside nearby, the scout follows a visible trail through the dark forest and identifies the route toward the weakened prodigy, who suffered a serious fall while trying to escape the elite forces of the respected martial order nearby. Enormous rocks, the ravine appears extremely dangerous as mercenaries surround the weakened heir and offer him one final chance to surrender. They threaten to end his escape beside the ominous valley where broken rocks had stopped his fall from the old bridge. With little strength remaining, the heir tries to stand on a weakened leg while an arrogant opponent mocks his poor condition and the desperate leap he made into the dark ravine during his earlier escape. One forest mercenary raises his blade, confident nobody will arrive to intervene. They risk everything because the clan ignores the young man's failing condition. He looks toward his commander for permission to complete the mission and remove the weakened young man without further delay. The chief assassin gives a signal and authorizes the immediate attack. The attacker focuses upon the defenseless young man trapped beside the dirty ravine wall nearby. He walks closer, ignores the frightened youth's warning, and raises his weapon for one final downward strike without hesitation. Yule crosses the ravine in a flash and blocks the blade before it can reach his relative. Yule calmly explains that he came to protect his relative and remove this dangerous threat from the shadowy ravine for good. The powerful cultivator channels spiritual energy into the young man's damaged body, restores his broken arm, and steadies him beneath a brilliant golden glow inside the shadowy pit. His advanced technique eases every wave of suffering, stops the decline, and draws the badly weakened youth away from defeat through carefully controlled spiritual energy. Glowing currents surround the weakened arm, prevent further weakness, and leave the young man amazed by his unexpected rescuer. While helping his relative, Yule notices a purple curse spreading across the youth's back. His older relative tells him to rest and recover quietly while he handles all remaining attackers completely alone. Yule counts the surrounding enemies on his fingers, making the entire group nervous with his calm confidence and calculation before them. Their fighting force is enormous. He praises his relative for surviving the powerful assault and staying conscious despite many setbacks throughout the exhausting pursuit. The assassins rage because the stranger interrupted their execution. One furious fighter insults the newcomer who descended inside a golden aura. The killers hesitate because the quiet scholar shows no fear while facing their entire armed squad deep within the ruined forest ravine under the moonlit sky tonight. With his arms folded, the commander studies the intruder, quietly complaining while trying to measure the stranger's hidden spiritual strength. Their loud threats continue. Yule rests one hand upon his sword and stands perfectly still before the surrounding assassins. Moments later, an enormous wave of spiritual power crosses the darkness and illuminates the whole forest like a brilliant sunrise. The commander freezes after realizing they confronted a powerful master disguised as an ordinary traveler inside the shadowy forest nearby. A fearsome master stood hidden among them. A powerful gale strikes one attacker and throws him through a spinning tunnel of rushing wind. The cutting vortex tears apart everything. The impact splits the earth, breaks nearby stones, and carves a wide path across the forest. Frightened cries echo through the ravine after the unseen attack reaches every assassin across the surrounding battlefield. The roaring storm sweeps across the area, allowing the mysterious stranger to defeat the entire criminal group without any assistance. The aftermath reveals complete devastation, with every bandit defeated and the quiet ravine changed forever. Standing amid drifting ash, the commander trembles as his skilled fighters collapse nearby. Deep craters and broken trees cover the forest section that had remained peaceful only moments before the powerful attack arrived. The weakened youth stares in disbelief because his relative defeated the entire skilled squad with one attack and showed no exhaustion afterward whatsoever. He remains completely stunned, wondering whether the newcomer belongs to a legendary race capable of defeating elite warriors with effortless spiritual techniques alone. Overcome by panic, the final surviving assassin drops his weapon and begs for mercy. He offers information, hoping to avoid defeat at the hands of the frightening master standing before him. His teeth chatter as the terrified commander repeatedly asks for peace before the powerful stranger makes his final decision known. His plea is firmly refused, and the Dark Warrior answers with a powerful energy strike that ends the entire mercenary group's escape without showing any restraint. Standing alone before the terrifying master, the remaining assassin begins sweating as he realizes a crushing defeat is approaching and nobody can support him inside the shadowed ravine during this desperate confrontation tonight. His thoughts freeze after watching both partners fall instantly. A strange technique overwhelmed them immediately. Suddenly, the patriarch seizes the assassin from behind and roars that these cowards invaded his territory to threaten the missing heir for personal profit. The captured leader trembles before the furious patriarch while noticing the quiet scholar hidden among nearby trees, carefully observing the elder's overwhelming anger from complete safety silently. Anger surges through the elder as he restrains the captive, demanding answers from the weak mercenary who challenged the ancient and powerful ruler of Marshall Mountain today. Remaining hidden and motionless, the scholar panics privately, blaming terrible fortune because his father-in-law appeared during the single worst possible moment of this confrontation tonight. He suddenly understands that in his earlier life he survived only because the patriarch arrived through the ravine and rescued him during the final possible moment. Tension rises while the scholar calculates how to leave unnoticed and avoid questioning from his father-in-law, whose exceptional senses could easily track movement across the ravine. Avoiding the patriarch's attention, the scholar touches his temple and places the heir into a peaceful sleep so his silent departure can proceed without anyone noticing his escape. Seeing his unconscious son, the patriarch releases the captive and races across the ravine while shouting that he has reached the scene at last. The elder's rapid movement shakes the ground, leaving the released commander confused among the loose dirt where his entire team had recently fallen before the stranger nearby. He ignores abandoned enemy equipment. The patriarch launches a huge energy blast powered by concern for his family. The assassin's eyes widen when he realizes his defeat resulted from threatening someone protected by this master. The veteran's energy crashes into the commander with overwhelming force, removing every chance for escape as the technique tears through his defenses. From concealment, the scholar exhales in relief, knowing that standing beneath the patriarch's attack would have overwhelmed him within moments. He recognizes the extraordinary sword technique and understands why the patriarch commands enormous respect throughout the region. Assuming a commanding posture, the supreme master prepares another forceful charge toward the mercenaries still crawling nearby below. Brilliant energy illuminates the ravine as the elder releases anger to defend his household from the hostile mercenaries threatening everyone he values. Enraged because his family faced danger, the elder shouts harsh warnings while each powerful movement leaves cracks spreading across the floor. Gathering sharp blades of light, the patriarch coldly asks how long the commander's courage and voice can withstand relentless pressure. Frightened by the overwhelming display, the commander tries stepping aside, terrified of confronting the enraged elder while trapped near the ravine edge with nowhere to flee. The elder promises to defeat every remaining criminal with one final overwhelming sword technique. Hidden among nearby bushes, the scholar carefully analyzes the direct energy strike aimed toward the commander's center. One strike appears to bend reality itself. The force tears through earth, creates a colossal trench, and removes the grasses an energy blade passes overhead. Powerful wind carries it forward. The commander flies backward in astonishment after witnessing supreme technique released by the strengthened elder. Colliding with the rocks, the commander realizes he could not withstand another direct strike from a master displaying such extraordinary spiritual power. A towering shadow falls across the commander's neck, frightening him as the furious patriarch appears directly ahead before he can move aside or prepare any defense. Committed to his next strike, the elder delivers a severe warning, declaring that nobody should ever disrespect their powerful clan fortress again today. At the instant, his blade descends and releases a mountain-cutting wave followed by an explosion of force. Fear overwhelms the masked commander as he watches the approaching strike and realizes his chance of escape is quickly disappearing before him. Facing the empty ravine, he grips his weapon under strain and searches desperately for a way to escape before the attack overwhelms him. His mind races as the blade approaches and threatens to finish the confrontation immediately. He attempts one desperate parry. He swings his sword and blocks the instant strike, creating a fierce sandstorm that throws debris skyward and shakes the entire quiet ravine with one thunderous collision between both powerful techniques. When the dust clears, the patriarch advances and studies how the opponent managed to block his attack. Behind a magical barrier, the mercenary commander's strength fades because of the recoil. Evaluating his opponent, the elder nods at the displayed energy and recognizes a trained warrior capable of deflecting forceful attacks during advanced martial confrontations. Surprised by this encounter, the Grandmaster demands to know why he pursued petty assignments against the weakened heir. The mercenary clutches his weakened side, shouts through strain, and angrily curses veteran nearby. Accepting his defeat, the mercenary refuses to reveal any information and chooses to remain silent despite the patriarch's determined questioning. Growing impatient, the patriarch makes his sword shine brighter and announces that he will conclude this pointless delay immediately, ending the confrontation before anyone can interfere again tonight. Then a weak voice behind him makes the elder pause and stop his movement at once. With considerable effort, the young heir reaches the scene and tries explaining the situation clearly to his worried father. Despite his weakened condition, the successor explains that the person facing his father's anger is actually the stranger who rescued him from the other criminals. Understanding the explanation, the patriarch freezes and realizes he nearly made a mistake against his protector. Lying on the ground, the commander examines his fallen companions and realizes the heir's account must be completely accurate after everything he witnessed. The antagonist becomes terrified while estimating the extraordinary power of the unknown warrior who defeated his group alone inside the shadowy ravine earlier. The concerned patriarch supports his weakened son and urgently asks about his condition after confronting such danger alone. At that instant, the elder suddenly turns around after realizing that the captured commander has disappeared from view. Using the distraction created by the family's reunion, the commander escapes with the rapid movement technique and silently celebrates the unexpected chance to leave safely. Although annoyed by the escape, the patriarch acknowledges his opponent's ability and wonders about the identity and motives of this dangerous stranger. Examining his son's serious condition beneath the moonlight, the patriarch decides that their priority must be carrying the heir back to the fortress for proper care and protection without further delay. Hidden among the dark trees, the scholar watches the confrontation conclude nearby silently. Satisfied that his plans succeeded, the scholar quietly crosses the ravine to complete the final part of his strategy far away from the family and the returning patriarch's careful attention that night. Far from the fortress, a bundle hangs from a tree branch and moves as the trapped person inside struggles desperately against restraint. Perched on a high branch, the scholar hears muffled sounds from the captive, who is desperately attempting to escape the restraint, with his voice blocked and dignity gone. The true architect of the scheme now experiences confinement alone among the shadowy trees during the night. The powerful merchant struggles in fear, unable to understand how his comfortable evening became this frightening situation. Speaking with a trembling voice, he cries and insists that he was quietly resting inside his room before asking the hidden stranger why this unexpected situation happened to him tonight. Ignoring every plea, the scholar asks whether the captive owns valuable property and explains that surrendering everything he possesses might earn him a chance for immediate freedom. Concerned for his own safety, the wealthy merchant offers his entire fortune, prompting the scholar to demand the exact location where every asset and document is safely stored. Sitting calmly above him, the scholar listens as the merchant promises to disclose every hidden business secret and possession. The merchant's weight makes the worn rope creak as he begs for release and promises to guide the scholar toward all of his wealth. Studying the weakened rope, the scholar calmly observes that neither the branch nor the old cable seems capable of supporting the merchant for much longer. The mood turns serious when the scholar reveals that he spent the journey planning justice for the suffering imposed upon his brother-in-law. The captive becomes confused when the powerful Penn family is suddenly mentioned during this private conversation. With cold certainty, the scholar announces that the mercenaries failed and reveals that the young heir remains safe with both arms unharmed. Hanging upside down, the merchant becomes completely confused by this account of changed events and avoided disaster inside a future he cannot understand at all. Next, the scholar identifies the captive as the master of the Golden Pavilion and accuses him of financing criminal schemes that oppressed innocent people throughout the surrounding province for personal profit. A troubling history emerges, revealing how the merchant exploited vulnerable residents to expand his influence, fortune, and power across the province. Showing no sympathy, the scholar condemns the merchant for exploiting defenseless people to satisfy his ambition and considers which consequence would most effectively end such dishonorable behavior permanently. Consumed by panic, the captive shouts that the scholar broke his promise and accuses the man of using dishonest methods. Looking at his captive without sympathy, the scholar decides the harshest consequences to abandon him there. The merchant trembles in fear, realizing none of his possessions can rescue him. A sharp movement from the scholar's blade separates the rope holding the merchant. The captive drops through the darkness while shouting for assistance and begging not to be abandoned. His voice echoes below as the broken cord completes the scholar's carefully planned judgment against the cowardly pavilion leader that night. The next morning arrives bright and peaceful across the immense buildings surrounding the clan's family estate. Resting comfortably beneath warm blankets, the talented young heir slowly awakens after a long night of peaceful recovery. When his eyes open, the heir sees his relatives gathered nearby. His sister checks his condition while his cheerful young niece lovingly calls to him from beside the bed that morning. Rising with help from his relatives, the successor anxiously asks whether everyone remains safe after the frightening events that happened during the night. Confusing memories of the forest confrontation return to his mind, especially the masked mercenaries who surrounded him before help arrived. He remembers the unknown warrior who rescued him and recalls the incredible spiritual power displayed during that encounter in darkness. Still somewhat confused, he asks aloud whether he truly managed to return home safely. Overjoyed by her brother's recovery, Yan hugs the boy tightly and says that his long absence deeply worried their entire family. The heir smiles gently, thanking his sister for her love while enjoying the comforting feeling of being safe again. Then his gaze shifts toward the familiar silhouette of his brother-in-law standing quietly nearby. While watching the family reunion, a sudden memory returns, recalling the piercing gaze and calm stance of the hooded hero he encountered in the woods. Seeing his sister's husband standing nearby with that same relaxed posture, the heir feels a strange sense of familiarity settle inside his mind. Noticing her brother's distraction, Yan asks whether he feels any discomfort and immediately offers to bring someone who can provide proper medical assistance nearby. Shaking his head calmly, Sayajin assures his sister that his condition has improved and asks her not to worry about him anymore. He dismisses the thought with a quiet laugh, deciding it is ridiculous to imagine that the scholar and powerful masked warrior could be one person. After the heir returns safely, Yule walks quietly across the fortified family grounds. Soon afterward, a local merchant visits the clan compound and chooses to reveal the truth about everything that happened during the night. The merchant kneels and asks for understanding, explaining that the Golden Pavilion's owner ordered him to place special tracking incense secretly inside Sayajin's clothing earlier. However, when the Pang family inspected the owner's property, they discovered an unexpected problem there. The magnificent Golden Pavilion was left in ruins after a mysterious incident. Furthermore, the establishment's owner became completely overwhelmed and disappeared into the depths, leaving every valuable possession and business asset behind without any explanation for anyone. Unable to identify who caused the pavilion's ruin, the patriarch and his son discuss the mystery and try to discover the identity of the masked hero who protected the heir in the woods, wondering where the guardian might be. Meanwhile, The protagonist rests peacefully beside a wooden walkway, quietly watching the flow of water, watching her son-in-law from a distance. The family matriarch appears thoughtful about what the future may hold for the young man within that household now. Later, she meets privately with her husband and advises him to assign a suitable mission to the outsider who recently joined their household. Surprised by the proposal, Muong folds his arms and asks exactly what his wife means, then learns that she is discussing their son-in-law again. Treating the suggestion like a foolish joke, the patriarch laughs loudly and scoffs, claiming that the young man is merely an unskilled dependent without ability of his own. Remaining serious, the matriarch sips her tea and argues that senior family members must guide a younger generation, even when those elders continue holding important positions themselves throughout the entire clan's leadership structure. To persuade her husband, she suggests assigning the young man a difficult position that everyone else refuses because the work is especially demanding and uncomfortable. Understanding her strategy, the old man reveals a sly smile as the matriarch asks whether he has already thought of a suitable assignment. Excited by the opportunity to challenge him, the patriarch confirms that he has developed a plan for the situation. Laughing with clear mischief, he promises his wife that her wish will be granted, remembering that a troublesome faction should be returning from its assigned punishment at that very moment back to their compound. Far from the fortress, a ruined landscape surrounds the dirt road where a frightened merchant cries and begs for mercy. Terrified and weakened, the merchant weeps, insisting that he already surrendered every possession, but an angry voice orders him to stop hiding the rest of the truth there. The bandit leader lifts a massive axe and demands the golden pavilion's hidden fortune, startling the captive, who explains that the entire business has already become completely bankrupt. Unable to obtain more money, the towering leader decides to sell the remaining captives into forced service while his followers restrain a frightened woman nearby. Suddenly, several figures descend from the treetops, prompting the startled bandits to prepare themselves for an unexpected confrontation. The raider commander turns around, completely confused by the sudden collapse of his carefully organized criminal plan now. A stern, focused face appears from the shadows, revealing several skilled fighters ready for confrontation nearby. Several strong and imposing fighters surround the area, revealing the return of the troublesome faction mentioned by the patriarch. The bandits panic and question the newcomer's identity while one nervous member stammers repeated orders to drive the visitors away from their territory. Stepping forward with complete confidence, the fierce team's commander quietly observes that these bandits are talking too much already. In a single instant, the newcomers rush toward the attackers, creating an impressive blur of coordinated movement throughout the crowded confrontation area. Wearing a cheerful grin and showing sharp teeth, one fighter delivers a powerful strike that sends an opponent reeling backward immediately. The spiky-haired young man complains that the crowd is making too much noise, then charges forward quickly with full determination to silence the surrounding troublemakers. After the attack, the bandit leader orders his followers to stand firm, emphasizing their numerical advantage over newcomers nearby. Gestures, the large bandit swings his heavy axe, desperately trying to force the advancing fighters away by all means, easily avoiding the swing. One fighter calmly remarks that this confrontation feels too simple because the opposing bandits lack strength. The team leader tells his companion not to become angry over a minor issue, then asks everyone to slow down and avoid frightening the innocent people nearby right now. Pulling the woman closer, the desperate bandit presses a blade near her throat, threatening everyone nearby. Trembling with fear, the bandit warns that he will harm the women unless the fighters allow him to leave the area safely without being followed. However, before the bandit finishes his warning, a swift punch suddenly catches him in the center of his startled face. The tremendous force sends the troublemaker flying backward across the clearing, causing him to release the frightened civilian immediately. Landing lightly and leaning upon his staff, another fighter mocks the foolish behavior displayed by his defeated opponent moments earlier. Satisfied with the successful outcome, the commander stretches his neck and congratulates the group for their excellent performance in resolving the dangerous situation so quickly. He turns toward the civilians and attempts to explain that they are now protected there, but discovers everyone kneeling and desperately begging the unfamiliar fighters for mercy. The young fighter becomes puzzled by the frightened behavior of the rescued civilians. Finding the situation amusing, the staff-carrying fighter pats his leader's back and jokes that near these merchants, their group appears more delinquent than the original bandits now. Trying to ease the tension, the leader crouches down and assures the merchants that everything is simply a misunderstanding because his companions are actually good people. Seeing the White Wolf emblem sewn onto their clothing, the merchant immediately recognizes these warriors. Excited by the discovery, the merchant realizes they are the famous White Wolf Squadron, a group representing the military strength of the Penguin. Deeply grateful for the rescue, the merchant shakes the commander's hand and offers thanks. While the commander tells everyone to continue their journey safely, he claps his hands to gather the squad's attention. The fighter declares that they must return to base before their superiors begin demanding an explanation for the delay. During the long journey back to the Pang family's estate, the squad gradually becomes calmer and relaxed. While climbing the mountain trail, the largest fighter complains that they cannot enjoy a peaceful drink, and his companion says their own disrespect toward an important bear caused the problem. After reaching the inner grounds, they continue complaining about the young master's arrogance, but their commander orders everyone to stay quiet and prevent additional trouble. Suddenly, the spiky-haired fighter leaps forward after noticing an unfamiliar person standing directly outside the entrance to their remote lodging there. The team stops halfway along the path and begins shouting questions about the unfamiliar visitor standing inside their territory. Watching the commotion calmly, Yule offers a gentle smile and observes that the group was indeed absent. The fighters surround the newcomer, inspect his clothing, and question him sternly, finding it extremely strange that such a young man wandered around their compound. The staff-carrying fighter leaps forward and lands nearby to examine closely. Taking charge, the commander apologizes for everyone's rudeness and explains that their prolonged isolation has made the squad rather restless lately. Ignoring the confusion, the patriarch calmly explains that the supreme leader personally sent him to handle a matter carrying tremendous importance for their entire family. Studying the newcomer from head to toe, the squad remains wary because nobody remembers seeing him around the clan before. So Yule explains that he arrived only recently inside the fortress. Setting their doubts aside temporarily, the commander studies the situation and invites the visitor inside so they can begin a proper conversation. They settle across from each other at a rustic table inside the lodge and begin talking together. After sipping some tea, the protagonist places his cup upon the table, creating a dry sound that breaks the silence inside the room. The commander speaks first, formally introducing himself as a White Wolf Squadron member and apologizing for the delayed return. Showing equal courtesy, Yule introduces himself politely before the commander asks him to explain the purpose behind his unexpected visit today. With a confident smile, the young man explains that he came only to complete a direct order issued by the patriarch Mujing. The atmosphere becomes tense as the warrior narrows his eyes and questions exactly what kind of order the patriarch has issued. Speaking directly, the visitor announces that beginning at that precise moment, he will assume the role of permanent captain for the White Wolf unit. To prove his statement, he places an important token upon the table and clearly repeats the patriarch's official decision for everyone present there. Looking at the table, the fighter recognizes the captain's authority token and incredulously asks whether this stranger expects to command then. He admits hearing several rumors about a resilient newcomer within the family. Yule politely expresses gratitude for this unexpected recognition. However, the warrior's tone changes when he explains that despite the newcomer's impressive stamina, people claimed he is merely a scholar without any serious martial ability whatsoever. With a serious warning, he explains that this squad is an elite combat division, completely different from companions taking a simple morning stroll around the quiet family courtyard together. Keeping his arms tightly folded, the warrior explains that they cannot accept any commander lacking real combat experience, even when that appointment comes directly through orders from the family's highest leadership. Considering the unusual criticism, Yule smiles ironically and replies that he has also heard many rumors about the supposedly unbreakable honor maintained by this proud squad before. Setting his teacup calmly upon the table, Yule observes that judging by their current behavior, the team resembles a group of untamed dogs unable to recognize right from wrong today. Infuriated by the insult, the warrior crushes the cup beneath his hand and demands that the stranger repeat exactly what he said. Remaining composed, the protagonist asks whether they feel proud of ignoring orders, reminding them that a martial squad serves as the patriarch's sword, while a weapon without an owner has no useful reason to exist anymore. He adds that the clan leader has good reason to avoid using them, since a sharp blade that refuses its owner becomes entirely disposable in battle. Striking the table with his fist, the warrior insults the newcomer and calls him unworthy. At that moment, the large fighter rises aggressively and forcefully pushes his chair away, releasing a dark and intimidating presence. He warns that he will not accept orders from an interfering son today, in law, but a commanding voice immediately interrupts him and orders the furious warrior to stop speaking. The fighter's eyes widen as the sudden command surprises him completely. Entering through the lodge doorway, another figure appears and instantly breaks the tense atmosphere hanging over the room. The newly arrived man sternly asks what kind of resistance they are showing toward the captain who has been appointed. Yule remembers that the White Wolf Squad became famous throughout the martial world for punishing criminals without offering mercy. They performed those missions secretly under the name of the Red Wolf Squad. He privately admits that he has always been curious about this unusual squad's complicated history. He wonders why people once guided by justice eventually distanced themselves from the Pang family, and how those same warriors later became independent mercenaries surrounded by constant conflict across the region. However, after meeting the warriors personally, the protagonist understands that these men are simply not the kind of people who willingly submit to strict institutional rules. With a sly smile, he observes that these young men resemble fierce wolves more than disciplined martial artists, an attitude that clearly explains their rivalry with the patriarch. Studying the newly arrived warrior's position, Yule realizes that this man serves as the stabilizing influence keeping those troublemakers under control. Introducing himself politely, the long-haired man bows and says his name is Achimu, the squad's vice commander. He acknowledges their duty to follow every command from the highest leadership throughout the clan. Because of his subordinate team's defiant behavior, he asks the visitor to generously overlook such rudeness today. Pleased by the different attitude, the protagonist tells him to lift his head, receiving a respectful expression of gratitude from Achimu. Considering the situation, Yule notices that the vice commander calmed the squad and secured their temporary cooperation, but remains curious about whatever mood these warriors might attend. While drinking his tea, the warrior becomes certain that the squad is planning to remove him from command. Meanwhile, inside the barracks, the giant Tassin asks why he was stopped from confronting the newcomer, but Chamu responds by asking whether that stranger looked like someone who would surrender easily today. Still frustrated, the fighter asks whether they intend to simply let the scholar become commander of their proud squad. He insists that accepting such behavior would damage the team's reputation. The vice captain explains that forcing him out would be a poor strategy considering their fragile relationship with the family's lineage. With a calculating look, he decides their best strategy is making the stranger surrender the position and depart entirely through his own free choice. Days pass before the vice commander suggests that the protagonist answer an urgent request directed toward their squad. As Yule studies the documents, Chamu explains that the Pan clan often accepts these requests to serve remote regions ignored by officials. He notes that because other elite forces exist inside the clan, there must be an important reason for officials to request their particular squad so quickly for this assignment. Privately, Chamu mocks the commander's lack of practical experience, explaining that every other force is busy or assigned elsewhere in the region. He warns that rejecting the request means nobody will complete the mission, although other choices remain if the new captain feels dissatisfied with this difficult arrangement right now. Interrupting the discussion, Yule decides that their squad will accept the assignment and asks whether everyone can begin the journey early the following morning. Celebrating that his chat worked, the vice commander warns that the scholar must prepare himself for several days away from home, a requirement the newcomer readily accepts. While sipping tea, Chimu confirms the departure and privately predicts that soon the inexperienced captain will tremble whenever anyone merely mentions the name of their squad during missions. He promises himself that the enormous difference between a scholar's comfortable daily routine and the demanding realities of martial life will soon become obvious to the newcomer. The following morning, Little Soil jumps cheerfully into her father's arms and asks him to return home very quickly again. With a warm smile, the fighter says goodbye to his family, while his squad waits behind him. The thunderous rhythm of heavy hooves striking the grassy earth announces the beginning of their expedition together. Riding upon their mounts, the members of the White Wolf Squadron cross the broad fields surrounding that region. That night, the squad establishes a camp around the fire while the protagonist rests peacefully beside his companions in silence. The expedition resumes rapidly the next morning, with every fighter riding at full speed along a dusty road toward the destination. Hours later, the view shifts toward a small and completely isolated village with an abandoned and desolate appearance nearby. Pulling his mount's reins, the vice commander points toward the rustic homes and tells the captain that their group has finally arrived at the destination. Silently examining the surroundings, Yule wears a serious expression as he senses the heavy atmosphere hanging throughout this seemingly quiet and isolated village. Walking through the settlement, the protagonist encounters weakened residents lying nearby and realizes the true emergency is much more serious than the original distress message had described earlier. Chamu explains that a bandit stronghold exists nearby and that their main objective is locating the hidden base. He continues by reporting that the bandits recently doubled the security fees demanded from every local resident throughout this region during the last collection. That policy inevitably produced the suffering and hardship now visible everywhere. Evaluating the situation calmly, Yule concludes aloud that those criminals plan to leave the entire region very soon. Completely surprised by that immediate conclusion, the vice captain asks what the newcomer means to communicate through his statement. Looking toward his subordinate, the family man sarcastically asks whether any other sensible explanation could account for the bandits' sudden actions nearby. Before their discussion continues, loud and commanding voices suddenly emerge from deep inside the woods, interrupting the clan squad's conversation immediately. Intimidating bandits block the road and mockingly ask why a richly dressed scholar has entered such a dangerous area alone today. The bandit leader laughs harshly and orders everyone to surrender their money, then leave the region immediately together with all of their nervous porters nearby. Immediately, Chamu takes a defensive stance and tells the captain to move back, assuring him that he can manage these aggressive thieves himself. Ignoring the warning, Yule steps forward, displays the Pank family emblem, and orders the criminals to surrender while revealing the path toward their base in exchange for leniency today. Furious after hearing the influential family's name, the bandit leader commands the newcomer to end the performance and prepare for confrontation. Lifting a weathered blade, the leader shouts that upon this mountain, only his group possesses authority. Completely unaware of the danger, the bandit crowd charges directly toward the rescue squad. Wearing a focused expression, the vice commander begins drawing his sword from its sheath while dismissing the bandits as fools. With remarkable speed, Chim rushes forward, cutting through the air faster than his stunned opponents can follow while every criminal struggles to understand the sudden coordinated attack unfolding before them. Broken pieces of weapons and armor scatter across the battlefield before falling directly onto the dirt. Without pausing to recover, the warrior overwhelms another bandit with a powerful downward strike delivered from above before anyone responds. Terrified by the sudden defeat, one raider stumbles backward and trembles after noticing a towering fighter approaching his position. Using the opening, the giant Tassin delivers a powerful punch to the bandit's face and sends the stunned criminal down instantly. With only one bandit remaining, the frightened criminal crawls away and points toward the hidden base, hoping the information will protect him from further consequences. With an intimidating smile, Yule explains that the squad only needed one guy to reveal the path and complete the opening stage of their mission. A short time later, the squad discovers a large fortress hidden among trees. While the protagonist realizes their destination was much closer than he expected, when the squad approaches the fortress walls, guards at the main entrance begin shouting and demanding that the visitors identify themselves. Filled with confidence, the vice captain says their identities do not matter and summons two subordinates forward now. Eager to demonstrate their ability, the two fighters rush ahead and promise to clear the obstacle immediately with a lead. One warrior channels all strength into his leg before launching a powerful front kick against the entrance. The sturdy wooden fortress door collapses beneath the powerful kick, allowing the squad to enter the hidden compound and continue their mission without hesitation. Tassin delivers a punch that sends the first guard tumbling backward. The squad advances relentlessly while another section rapidly clears the remaining camp defenses within only a few moments of coordinated action. The advance continues as Chamu leaps through the air and surprises every guard with a sequence of swift movement. Walking through the broken doorway, Yule tells the squad to prepare for the challenge ahead. Charging forward, the commander kicks a huge wooden gate and sends one opponent tumbling backward across the courtyard quickly. Standing confidently, the long-haired fighter pushes several opponents backward using only the force created by his straight punches alone. Inside the compound, the fortress falls into chaos as the squad steadily advances through every guarded defensive position. Watching closely, Yule praises the team's perfect coordination and highlights the great experience that each fighter brings today. Even so, the family leader understands that this disorder is only the first stage of a greater challenge waiting inside the fortress. A massive sword strikes the ground with great force, followed immediately by an angry roar. The fortress commander enters the courtyard with a threatening posture and angrily asks how these strangers dare to invade his protected territory today. Tassin smiles at the display and calmly dismisses the commander as another noisy bandit nearby. The bandit raises his huge sword, demands their names, and promises to end this troublesome performance very quickly before everyone watching nearby. Standing proudly, the penguin warrior declares that nobody has ever defeated him in a contest of strength throughout his entire long life against countless regional opponents. Starting the contest, the bandit leader calls his opponent foolish and warns that the stranger will quickly regret challenging him today. Taking one step backward, Tassin agrees and explains that he has never lost a contest of strength during his life. The clash between enormous fighters creates a powerful burst that fills the courtyard with a thick cloud of dust. Losing sight of his opponent, the bandit leader is surprised when Tassin appears and says that he moves slowly. The commander looks stunned when Tassin asks whether physical strength is his only ability in this challenge. Angered by the comment, the giant insults Tassin, calls him a coward, and charges straight toward the fighter with all his strength. Several heavy strikes break apart the wooden floor, yet Tassin avoids every attack with surprising ease. Frustrated, the bandit realizes Tassin moves away at the final possible moment simply to embarrass his opponent during the contest. Laughing softly, Tassin jokes that even a tortoise could move faster than the bandit's obvious and clumsy attacks. Embarrassed by the joke, the criminal tightens his grip on the sword and promises to answer immediately. Covered by a purple aura, the commander spins his massive sword and delivers a powerful strike. A huge wave of energy moves across the courtyard, threatening to overwhelm every obstacle standing within its path. Tassin remains calm within the powerful storm center. Tonin yawns and says that his opponent does not seem especially impressive after all. The squad fighter blocks the enormous energy attack with surprisingly little effort today. Using the open defense, Tassin lands a powerful punch against the bandit commander before the surprised giant can react. The impact sends the criminal backward as strong pressure spreads across his exhausted body. Calmly, Tassin asks whether the performance is over while ignoring the bandit's request for a pause. With no patience remaining, Tassin orders the bandit to stay quiet and ends the confrontation with one final powerful and controlled strike. The commander's defeat causes panic among his remaining followers, who stare at the result with shock and total confusion. Yule approaches calmly and praises Tassin's excellent performance while the warrior tries to hide his exhaustion from everyone. At that moment, an ominous laugh echoes across the courtyard from the seemingly defeated giant. Everyone watches in surprise as his frightening voice announces that the intruders have created a terrible situation for themselves here today. Pressing his palm against the floor, the bandit awakens a dark mysterious force that spreads throughout the fortress and vows that every invader will deeply regret entering this hidden stronghold without permission during their reckless mission today. Immediately afterward, the bandits throughout the fortress begin collapsing to the ground as the mysterious power affects everyone throughout the area. Confused by the situation, Tassin shouts and orders every fighter to lower their weapons. The vice commander offers mercy to anyone who yields, But the protagonist realizes that a greater threat is developing nearby. With sharp perception, Yule notices the severe disturbance consuming the space and energy around everyone nearby. The criminals fall into panic, crying that everything has failed and insisting their plan has reached complete collapse. Finding their response ridiculous, the long-haired warrior asks whether every bandit has abandoned sense and reason. Amid the confusion, Yule's eyes widen and his expression changes as he senses danger approaching nearby. The squad instantly freezes after sensing an intense vibration rising from beneath the ground. Chaos erupts. The fortress floor collapses and sends debris scattering in every direction with force. Straining to see through the dense dust, the vice commander becomes confused about the source and direction of this attack. The dust slowly clears, revealing a single figure muttering irritably about the sudden disturbance nearby. The Pang family squad remains alert while watching the stranger walk calmly across the damaged courtyard nearby. An elderly man marked by scars rubs his face and demands to know who dared to interrupt his rest today. Yule freezes when he recognizes the frightening aura surrounding the elderly stranger and focuses upon the rest mark located near the man's eye. Yule connects the clues and suspects the mysterious stranger's identity. Sensing no danger, Tassin demands answers from the stranger, forcing the captain to shout in alarm and order his companion to retreat. Confused by the warning, Tassin barely has time to blink before the elderly man appears beside him like a silent shadow. The intruder delivers a powerful strike toward the face of the squad's enormous and confident fighter. A brilliant burst of light crosses the courtyard and sends the fighter flying backward across the open ground instantly. Seriously weakened, the young fighter struggles to support himself while the elderly stranger expresses surprise that his opponent remained conscious after enduring the impact. The stranger praises Tassin's durability with a sarcastic comment that fills the vice commander with anger. Angered by the attack on his companion, Shamma rushes like lightning, but the stranger avoids his charge. With one simple and swift movement, the elderly man redirects the attack and sends the swordsman tumbling away. Laughing with delight, the mysterious master makes his enjoyment of the confrontation obvious to the stunned warriors there. A sequence of brilliant attacks crosses the courtyard and overwhelms every remaining fighter standing around the area. Keeping one palm raised, the stranger mocks the squad's weakness and asks whether that performance represents everything. Surrounded by overwhelming pressure, the master walks forward and demands that the fighters provide additional entertainment. Yule watches the frightening enemy advance while keeping a cautious and calculating expression. Hidden among the shadows, Yule confirms his suspicion and privately admits that his instincts about this stranger were correct. He finally recognizes the forgotten legendary figure once known as the Little Demon of Evil. He dominates martial arts history. This elder has been recorded as one of the most powerful antagonists throughout the regional history books. Yule remembers old tales explaining how this master chased excitement through dangerous mischief decades earlier. Legends claim he disappeared after causing a terrible disaster within the Norman clan during a previous era. Gripping his sword handle, Yule finds this surprise encounter unbelievable and asks if every member of his exhausted squad can still continue the mission today. Leaning on his combat staff, Tassin struggles to stand upright and breathes heavily after suffering the stranger's strike. The vice commander also sweats from exhaustion because an enormous difference in strength separates his weakened squad from this terrifying opponent before him. Looking across the courtyard, Yule feels relieved when he sees that every loyal companion has survived the confrontation. Though badly weakened, they remain conscious, letting their commander face the approaching threat without worrying about anyone else. With an unsettling laugh, the master celebrates his luck after discovering such an interesting group of opponents. Overwhelmed by panic, the remaining bandits retreat and tremble, realizing that the powerful elder intends to defeat every one of them without offering any mercy. Fear overwhelms the bandits, causing them to abandon their weapons and run away while attempting to escape the terrifying opponent behind them. Laughing darkly, the old master creates a sphere of black energy in his palm and mocks the fleeing bandits, saying they should demonstrate greater loyalty before attempting to depart today. Without hesitation, he launches the dark energy sphere with tremendous force toward the bandits attempting to flee. Several dark energy bursts fill the courtyard and strike every bandit who attempts to escape. Laughing wildly, the Dark Master declares that hearing terrified cries from helpless followers always brings pleasure to his twisted mind during an intense battle like this. Tassin clenches his fist while the Master orders him to bark loudly like a dog before everyone gathered inside the courtyard today. Furious, the squad warrior raises his head and shouts after hearing his opponent issue an arrogant challenge nearby. Ignoring his condition, Tassin gathers momentum and charges at the elder with determination, promising to settle their battle immediately before everyone watching in the courtyard. Amused by Tassin's desperate rush, the elder smiles and challenges the young warrior to prove what his strength can accomplish. The Pang family warrior gathers all his remaining energy and launches a powerful aura strike forward. The man raises one palm and easily blocks the attack. releasing a powerful wave of energy that shakes the entire courtyard. Exploiting the exposed defense, the Dark Master creates a dense energy attack and promises that its force will overwhelm his opponent's structure. In one instant, the dark energy strikes Tassin and surprises the charging warrior before he can respond. At that critical moment, someone calls out for the weakened warrior while the distracted elder says the frightened scream sounds very pleasant to him today. Changing his plan, the Dark Master explains that his original intention involved amusing himself with this group for a single day of entertainment. Now he decides to extend their punishment across 3 long days, keeping every defeated fighter trapped in constant fear throughout the ordeal. Vice Commander Chimu despises his opponent, refuses to accept this outcome, and gathers the group's remaining strength for a resistance. He orders every fighter to follow one coordinated tactic and begin their united counterattack immediately. The Elder remains completely calm before the coordinated advance. The Old Master smiles and notes that their timing is poor. As a vast dark aura gathers around him, he declares that they are fortunate to witness the full strength of his martial training here for themselves. Ku leads forward with her blade, determined to block the powerful attack before reaching her companions. The difference in strength becomes clear when the young man's eyes widen at the enormous aura forming directly before him across the battlefield nearby. The Elder releases an overwhelming wave of dark energy that engulfs every swordsman standing within its path. The powerful collision clears the battlefield and leaves every White Wolf Squad member defeated upon the broken ground around them. The commander's blade remains planted beside him as he bitterly criticizes the terrible situation surrounding his battered team. Lying on the ground and breathing heavily, the fighter blames his weak body for spending all his energy merely to remain conscious after the first attack struck him. Seeing his weakened condition, the Dark Master asks whether the kneeling young man plans to beg for another chance. Deepening the fear across the silent room nearby, Yua walks to the rune center and firmly announces that the game is over. He orders his followers to stand back. Breathing heavily and marked by the fight, Chimu looks upward in confusion as the unfamiliar captain steps forward to lead their struggling group inside the hall. Surprised when the fighting suddenly stops, the Elder asks the unexpected newcomer to identify himself immediately. Yu formally introduces himself as the leader of that troop. Looking at the main character from head to toe, the old man laughs and declares that he lacks a commander's presence. Until now, he has appeared no braver than a terrified little mouse. Maintaining a serious expression, the patriarch privately decides that the stranger pretended to rest only to hide his dangerous power from the followers. Clinging to the floor, Chimu begs the stranger not to bargain with his own safety. He believes their dangerous enemy has no intention of sparing anyone nearby that evening. Offering a reassuring smile, Yule tells his follower not to be fooled. He explains that the Elder is a feared figure responsible for countless disasters across many earlier eras. Losing patience with the conversation, the Dark Master demands to know whether the newcomer possesses anything genuinely valuable enough to exchange for forgiveness. With fearless confidence, the protagonist says he certainly possesses what is needed. He promises to end the villain's reign and make the ordeal somewhat easier. The commander's tired eyes widen at the newcomer's astonishing confidence. Stunned that anyone would challenge a master of such magnitude, the Elder pauses after hearing the sharp remark and tries to understand the young man's confidence. With a grim expression, the Dark Master asks whether the stranger is mocking him and warns him to consider every word very carefully before he speaks again. Sudden anger overwhelms the old man as he gathers his scattered energy. The stranger's lack of fear enrages him, and he declares that the confident newcomer has chosen a path toward certain defeat. With swift movement, the villain launches one dark orb directly toward the waiting troop commander. Without showing any difficulty, Yule raises one hand and simply redirects the powerful attack as though brushing aside an annoying insect from his path nearby. The Elder stares in disbelief as his formidable technique disappears instantly without leaving any harm upon the calm warrior before him. Standing perfectly upright while the breeze moves his hair, the family man remains completely calm. His posture clearly proves that the difference in power is far greater than the Elder had imagined. He laughs at what happened. The protagonist calmly reminds him they were talking, then sarcastically asks what happened to his supposedly unbeatable spiritual technique now. Unable to accept the result, the old man shouts that nobody should escape his ultimate ability and rejects everything happening before his eyes. Consumed by anger, the antagonist releases a powerful storm of dark blasts and tries to overwhelm his opponent completely. Showing remarkable speed, Yua crosses the battlefield while smoothly avoiding every incoming shadow attack. The vice commander watches in disbelief as the newcomer crosses the entire battlefield within a single moment. He remains completely astonished after realizing that the apparently fragile scholar is actually an exceptional fighter with incredible speed and control before the gathered soldiers nearby. Finding an opening between the opponent's attacks, the family man gathers momentum, leaps upward, and releases his own powerful ancestral energy. Appearing directly before his opponent, Yule thrusts forward an illuminated palm. He asks where the elder learned the terrible habit of making noise while other people are speaking, leaving no chance to defend himself at all. The leader releases a tremendous golden wave at close range against the Master of Darkness before him. The explosion clears the landscape. Brilliant golden power overwhelms the shadow energy in one display of strength. The elder cannot understand how the young man neutralized his special martial technique and recreated the strength of that attack with such effortless control immediately. Stranded on the ground, Tazan and Chima watch in complete amazement. The larger fighter stammers as he asks whether his companion truly witnessed that remarkable event unfold nearby. Weakened and surrounded by smoke, the antagonist admits with dread that his rival managed to perform the perfect counterattack. After seeing the technique only once, the elder studies Yule's impressive stance beneath the sunlight. He admits without hesitation that this remarkable man is certainly not an ordinary reader of ancient scrolls at all. Curious about the young man's remarkable abilities, the Dark Master demands to know why someone of such immense power has come to this place and asks for his true identity immediately. Keeping his composure, Yule reminds the elder that he already introduced himself as a member of the Pang family. The old man laughs and questions whether that ordinary clan could ever produce a master of such incredible power. Yule smiles confidently. The main character announces that everything will change from this moment forward. He promises to make the Pang family the strongest and respected clan across the world. Hearing the bold statement, the old man releases one weak and restrained laugh. At first, he treats the young man's plan like a joke. Then he erupts into wild laughter, allowing his unstable voice to echo throughout the fortress courtyard around them. His expression changes as he welcomes a serious duel. The antagonist agrees that the clan may reach the summit someday, but declares that he will first defeat the confident newcomer using only his own strength. His body expands with powerful muscles and visible veins as he warns the young man to feel honored by this final display. Tazan and the vice commander stare in complete disbelief as the transformed master's overwhelming spiritual pressure fills every corner of the ruined courtyard around them. Remaining remarkably calm before this immense threat, the family man offers only a slight smile and shows no concern about his opponent's strength. Assuming his strongest and most dangerous form, the Dark Master promises that the stranger will deeply regret forcing him to reveal the full extent of this forbidden transformation today before everyone. The scene suddenly shifts to the peaceful main hall of the Penn family, filled with gentle light and standing in sharp contrast to the conflict. Beside the wooden balcony, Yan watches leaves drifting in the breeze while revealing her hidden concern. Her expression reveals deep worry about her companion, who departed earlier to complete an important mission far away. Noticing the young woman's concern, the family leader approaches gently and asks why she remains alone in the cold air outside tonight. The matriarch kindly observes that the young woman has endured sleepless nights while waiting anxiously for news about her partner. A memory shows Yule practicing calligraphy in perfect calm. She reflects that the family's fighters are accustomed to harsh weather, yet burdens carried within the heart are often much harder for anyone to overcome without help. In her thoughts, Yan remembers her partner teaching young Sui to read and write. Realizing how greatly he has changed, overcome by concern, the young woman remembers that only recently the man had lived as a humble teacher inside one peaceful village nearby. Suddenly, hurried footsteps rush across the wooden walkway and break the tense silence that had filled a quiet pavilion. Arriving completely breathless, the talented young Saiyajin calls for his sister and asks whether she heard the important news from outside. Still catching his breath, the young man announces that the famous White Wolf Squad has finally returned from its dangerous mission. At the fortress entrance, an excited crowd gathers and discusses rumors that the returning squad successfully defeated the feared master who had challenged their family recently. Proof of the completed mission appears when one fighter raises the enemy's broken insignia, leaving every gathered villager amazed by the truth of their victory today. Unnoticed amid the celebration, Yule walks calmly while the guards begin to suspect that the quiet scholar accomplished more than expected. Ignoring every rumor, the protagonist remains completely calm because he knows exactly who is truly responsible for everything that happened. Leaving the excited crowd behind, the father continues directly toward the family's private rooms without stopping. The moment he crosses the threshold, young Sui smiles brightly and runs into her father's arms while his relieved wife finally releases the breath she held inside. Filled with joy, the father shows a gentle expression upon seeing the two people who matter most in his life. He embraces his family after their long separation and softly tells them that he has finally returned home completely safe and stay beside that. Later, the soldiers assemble before the main hall and prepare for their formal meeting with the family commander. The vice commander gently taps their leaders back in support. Commander Chimu quietly advises the newcomer to use the patriarch's cheerful mood as an opportunity to earn greater favor within the clan. Clenching his fist, The vice commander hesitates briefly before stepping forward and drawing the attention of the group leader. With a serious expression, Jimmu admits that he still cannot accept the squad receiving complete credit for defeating the powerful threat that had confronted their entire force. The memory of that confrontation returns and reminds him that without the captain's direct intervention, every member of their squad would have become nothing more than entertainment for the powerful enemy. Holding the mission's reward, the giant Tazan agrees completely and emphasizes that the quiet scholar personally confronted and defeated the isolated master without any assistance. Yule calmly places a hand upon his companion's shoulder and reassures the team that nobody is taking credit that truly belongs elsewhere. Still, every team member bows before him and asks that he tell the patriarch the truth and accept responsibility for their victory. With a gentle smile, the protagonist praises their honesty but considers their extreme fairness unnecessary in this particular situation. Turning toward the team, the young man ends the debate and admits that he dislikes drawing attention because strangers would constantly bother him throughout every day if his power became known. Jimmu's eyes widen as he recognizes a strange detail. He wonders whether the great commander of the formally dressed family truly knows nothing about the newcomer's enormous hidden abilities. Standing firmly, Yule promises secrecy and admits that even his closest companion remains completely unaware of his fighting ability. Confused by that position, the vice commander asks why Yule decided to reveal his genuine abilities before the squad while they were inside the forest. Looking over his shoulder, the family man simply explains that a newly appointed captain could never remain inactive while loyal followers risked everything before his eyes nearby. With a calm expression, he asks that nobody recognize his contribution because handling the resulting attention would only leave him completely exhausted daily. Gritting his teeth and tightening one fist, Tazan shows serious concern about the possible consequences of this story for the family. Growing nervous, the giant imagines countless challengers arriving to test the group after hearing rumors that these ordinary soldiers defeated the famous Master of Darkness together recently. With a relaxed laugh, Yule assures his companion that if such trouble ever occurs, he will handle every opponent himself. His confident answer leaves the entire group completely speechless. Half of his face remains hidden in shadow as he quietly says that everything will eventually work out for the best anyway. Accepting the assignment, Jimmu takes one deep breath and orders the entire squad to adjust its formation before facing the approaching challenge. Standing before the fortress gates, the vice commander announces that once they cross the entrance, everyone will remember them as brave warriors who defeated the feared master threatening their family that day. Filled with quiet confidence, the protagonist offers a slight smile while listening to the enthusiastic praise coming from his squad. The final decision settles everyone's remaining concern completely. Yule gives the order for everyone to enter the grand chamber. The sturdy wooden gates slowly open and reveal the luxurious hall where the family's senior leadership awaits. Seated upon his grand chair, Patriarch Muong smiles and observes that the returning troublemakers have truly completed an extraordinary accomplishment for the family. The tired squad bows together with perfect courtesy and shows appreciation for Commander Muong's warm welcome today. Clearly delighted, the elderly patriarch releases a hearty laugh and declares that the team's excellent timing makes this the perfect day for a celebration inside the family hall. The patriarch remembers that the defeated opponent was a legendary master whom even the greatest organizations in the martial world had failed to control throughout many long and difficult years before today. The veteran leader reflects that even in a weakened state, the old master still possessed enough energy to challenge him as an equal. The memory of the antagonist's overwhelming pressure crosses Muong's mind. He still struggles to believe that a master of such immense power was defeated under his son-in-law's leadership. Watching the quiet figure, the family leader notes that this great threat ended while the newly appointed captain held immediate command over the entire returning squad alone. Troubled by their false claim, Jimmu frowns and nearly reveals the truth immediately. He knows the others intend to give every honor from the mission to their captain instead before everyone gathered inside. Studying the situation carefully, one council member recognizes a perfect chance to interrupt the celebration and influence the patriarch. Rising from his chair, the council member requests permission to speak. The patriarch quickly agrees. Using a flattering voice, the elder predicts that the White Wolf Squad's fame will soon spread throughout the martial world and attract attention from numerous powerful factions across many surrounding regions in the near future as well. Stroking his beard, Mugang agrees that the prediction sounds reasonable because defeating a powerful Dark Master is certainly no minor accomplishment for Squad. Wearing an ironic smile, the advisor claims that this situation will greatly benefit the clan. However, he strongly suggests that one enormous hidden problem remains within an otherwise successful situation. Turning toward the squad, the council member pretends to worry and asks whether its current captain can truly manage the complicated challenges that arise. The vice commander grows furious while hearing the elder claim he means no disrespect toward the patriarch's son-in-law, despite speaking with contempt before everyone present inside the chamber. Continuing his performance, the council member warns that opportunists will soon challenge the squad and argues that leading such a famous team would become an impossible burden for the foreigner. Watching the elder with a sharp gaze, the patriarch orders him to stop delaying and explain the proposal behind his repeated loyalty, claiming he wants to reduce the burden upon the captain. The advisor waits, Mukang rests his chin and asks whether this council member has already selected a different person for the leadership position. Without hesitation, the council member nominates his son Don and insists that the young man is perfectly qualified to assume command in several ways. Remembering the past, the patriarch questions the elder's contradiction because the same advisor had strongly opposed the identical suggestion during their earlier discussions. Yet now he requests the position while claiming that a father's intuition supports this choice. The elder argues that his heir has matured, prompting the patriarch to ask whether he honestly believes the young candidate is fully prepared to face conflict. Seeing how ridiculous the offer sounds, Chimu steps forward angrily and prepares to challenge the council member's dishonest political performance immediately. Before he can speak, Yule calmly extends one arm across Chimu's path and stops the interruption without saying a single word. Looking quietly over his shoulder, the main character asks the vice commander to remain calm and trust that the situation is developing exactly as expected. Speaking again, the patriarch agrees that the proposed candidate appears to possess every necessary qualification. Still, during the celebration, everyone affected by the decision deserves opportunity to speak. Addressing the center of the hall, Mukan asks every White Wolf Squad member to clearly state their genuine opinion regarding the proposed leadership change before everyone. The patriarch remembers that the squad originally disliked its newly appointed captain. This memory convinces the advisor that his scheme will succeed, and he waits with a confident smile inside the hall. The squad members exchange serious glances when the patriarch asks whether they truly wish to welcome another captain soon. Moving with perfect coordination, the fighters step forward together, firmly demonstrate their choice, and respectfully bow before the captain standing nearby. Standing behind Yule, the entire squad declares loudly that the man before them is their only captain and will remain their leader. Several hours later inside a private room, the council member laughs briefly and asks whether his son enjoyed watching that humiliating rejection occur before the entire hall. The elder slowly drinks and complains that the squad rejected him before everyone. He tries to calm his frustration by insisting they simply lacked better choices at that moment. With a calm smile, Don explains that the squad recently succeeded during its evaluation mission. He says provoking the patriarch now would be foolish and would only create unnecessary anger throughout the family hall during this joyful celebration. Lowering his cup, the elderly advisor admits that he reached his earlier conclusion quickly. Don eases the tension by thanking his father for trying to help. However, he notes that the words selected by the squad were unusually firm and specific. The striking memory returns, showing every fighter standing together and promising complete loyalty to their captain without hesitation. Kim's serious expression remains in Don's memory as he recalls the fighters' firm statement that keeping their current captain was the unanimous group decision. Calmly drinking from his cup, the talented fighter says he understands the refusal. Still, he finds it fascinating that the squad drew such a strict line around continuing to follow this unfamiliar captain alone. With an insightful smile, Don concludes that the atmosphere inside the formerly troubled unit has completely changed. It seems those unruly fighters have finally discovered a captain capable of guiding the entire squad. Once settled inside the room, Don tells his father that the squad's current unity makes it impossible to replace their captain by force now. Therefore, Don says they must convince the young man to leave his position willingly. The elder taps his fingers against the table and asks whether his son already formed a plan. Don nods and explains that he intends to test the unity holding the White Wolf Squad together under pressure before deciding what action they should take against its captain. Smiling with hidden intentions, Don suggests placing mild pressure upon the squad so they can observe how its members respond together. Far from those political struggles, young Sui runs happily through the open gates and crosses the family's courtyard. Overflowing with excitement, the little girl calls for her father and races toward him. The warrior lifts his daughter into a warm embrace, then proudly asks whether she behaved well while he was away from the family home. Sui assures him that she behaved well and even enjoyed delicious treats while waiting at home. Deep peace fills the father's heart as he holds the precious little girl safely close. Gazing at the peaceful scene, Yan approaches smiling while the little girl giggles and complains that the hair on her father's face tickles her once again. His partner gently asks about his return and says the patriarch seemed pleased with how the mission unfolded. The young man explains that he spent some time celebrating with the team before he could finally return home to his family that evening. Adopting a serious tone, the protagonist turns toward his partner and cautiously calls her name. Surprised by the abrupt change in atmosphere, the woman hesitates and stumbles over her words during her reply. The young woman lowers her gaze, reveals her concern, and pleads with her partner to stop acting as commander of that dangerous group immediately. Troubled by the request, Yule asks whether something bad happened, but his companion quickly explains her fear. He pursued common criminals and ultimately confronted a dangerous legendary figure far beyond their ordinary strength alone. Yan cites frightening rumors about that formidable creature and points out that her partner is not even listed as a martial arts practitioner within the family records at this very moment. She continues by noting that the young man never carried anything heavier than their child during his life. Yule becomes completely confused and tries to reassure his wife, but she interrupts him before he can finish the gentle explanation. He begins. With tears filling her eyes, the young woman admits her fear as she imagines what could happen if he were hurt during another reckless confrontation. She asks how she and their daughter could possibly continue without him nearby each day, watching his beloved's tears. The warrior privately recognizes that he acted foolishly by overlooking the full depth of her understandable distress. Sitting in her father's lap, little Sui senses the sadness and innocently asks why her mother is crying so deeply. The protagonist accepts responsibility for thinking that giving the team credit would resolve every complication. Realizing that he behaved childishly, he offers his partner a genuine apology aloud before their worried little daughter. Gently touching his partner's face, Yule assures her that if this is truly her wish, he will request release from his duties the next morning without hesitation whatsoever. Drying her tears with her sleeve, Yan murmurs that he always knows exactly how to reassure her, but emphasizes that her earlier request was completely serious this time around. Turning away in embarrassment, she admits that she noticed how attached her partner has become to the disorganized troop. She also understands that clan rules make his position difficult to abandon without proper approval. Regaining her composure, Yan raises 2 fingers and says she will permit him to remain commander only if he fulfills 2 specific requirements. Surprised by her sudden change, the father blinks repeatedly and asks what the agreement involves. A full week passes before the sharp sound of a wooden weapon slicing through the air echoes intensely across the spacious family training ground nearby that afternoon before every interested family observer and instructor. With determination and strength, Sui practices her fighting stances while swinging her wooden staff in directions. Watching the girls exercise closely, Yule holds a wooden blade while standing near the center of the family's spacious open training area. His thoughts drift back to the recent conversation with his partner as he recalls the precise moment when she presented 2 agreements meant to ease her concern. Gently moving the training blade, he remembers that the first rule required him to remain as far as possible from dangerous assignment. Yan's words echo in his mind as she pleads with her partner to avoid placing himself at risk during dangerous missions like the recent fortress assignment. It would provide a perfect combat foundation. The man remembers his partner's second request. He must begin learning genuine combat techniques so he can protect himself during future missions. Concluding the sequence of movements, the protagonist lowers his wooden weapon and exhales calmly to steady his breathing. The warrior's peaceful moment ends when the sound of firm footsteps begins approaching steadily from behind him. Arriving with several companions, Don greets the new leader in an ironic and courteous manner. Maintaining his composure, Yule turns toward the visitor and calmly asks him to identify himself before proceeding. Showing faint courtesy, the council member calls the meeting a privilege and says the rumors concerning Yule's scholarly approach to martial arts appear accurate, because this unusual information has already spread rapidly throughout the entire family stronghold nearby. Privately, the visitor releases a mocking laugh and considers it complete nonsense that someone so inexperienced could now position himself as captain of an elite team today. Studying Yule's calm manner, Don privately concludes that he is merely an arrogant fool and struggles to understand why the group's proud fighters genuinely respect this unfamiliar commander so completely already today. His suspicions deepen because the young man participated in such an impressive triumph without boasting. Don decides this behavior represents more than simple modesty and instead suggests the attitude of someone protecting a hidden secret from every observer nearby. The council member remembers that Vice Commander Chimu himself frequently led every rejection of an outside captain during the troubled squad's long and complicated past years ago. He also recalls the team's intimidating stance as they blocked every attempt to alter leadership, clearly warning that nobody should interfere with the newly arrived outsider again. Returning to the present, Don pretends to be modest and offers direct assistance that might improve the new captain's skills, causing Yule to ask exactly how he intends to provide such guidance. Maintaining his artificial laughter, the advisor argues that practicing only fundamentals becomes boring and insists that genuine field experience is essential. Recognizing the obvious trap, the protagonist decides that his visitor speaks persuasively, though the man's intentions remain entirely clear beneath every selected word. Deciding to participate in the performance, Yule pretends ignorance and requests a recommendation. The visitor claims that improvement comes only through real contests, especially for somebody holding such a difficult and uncertain position within the family. Running his hand along his jaw, the fighter nods calmly and recalls how the previous assignment completely escaped their control before becoming far more complicated than anyone had originally expected during planning meetings. Using the opportunity, Don argues that the outsider needs experience handling the pressure of a confrontation and formally proposes that they test their skills together in a friendly contest directly upon the training ground. Displaying calculated concern, Yule asks whether the difference between their techniques might be too great for genuine training. Pretending to mean well, the council member assures the beginner that the process will remain simple and controlled. He promises to correct flaws in the newcomer's movements without causing trouble. Understanding the hidden challenge, the protagonist calmly accepts the proposal and steps forward with confidence before the observers gathered around the practice area. Standing face to face upon the training ground, the mentor suggests that the student use the wooden blade and demonstrate his earlier attacks, allowing the advisor to evaluate the supposed beginner skill level. Using slow, deliberately awkward movements, the student swings the blade and asks whether his posture is correct. Acting like a mentor, the advisor adjusts the newcomer's position and orders him to straighten his body, balance his weight, and control the wooden blade. The family leader continues the performance, scratches the back of his neck, and smiles awkwardly while commenting that proper blade training appears far more complicated than he originally imagined today. The advisor explains that every beginner struggles this way initially, certain of his superiority. The mentor lowers his guard and encourages the supposed beginner to attempt one frontal attack against him. Holding his wooden weapon firmly, the advisor arrogantly permits his rival to use full strength and confidently promises that this simple exercise would never give him the slightest trouble during their friendly contest today. Tightening his grip upon the blade, the protagonist adjusts his stance while listening to his opponent's firm command for him to begin. Without wasting a moment, the warrior suddenly disappears from his original position as he closes the distance with remarkable speed before anyone reacts. Before the council member can complete his arrogant speech, the commander appears before him and raises the wooden blade using flawless control and steady accuracy. The visitor's eyes widen with alarm when he realizes that he could not even follow the supposedly inexperienced scholar's rapid movement before him. A strange pressure fills the practice area as the wooden blade descends with amazing speed. Realizing he completely misunderstood his opponent, the advisor cries out in shock and freezes. The practice field falls silent after the commander stops the blade precisely before contact, leaving the frightened visitor rigid before him. The visitor remains rigid and trembles upon the ground while the composed commander stands upright directly before his stunned face. Lowering the wooden blade, the commander studies the visitor lying upon the ground and asks in an innocent tone whether he feels well. The advisor struggles for breath and sweats after the sudden demonstration. The advisor barely forms words and stammers in confusion while trying to understand the enormous force that overwhelmed him. Wearing a friendly smile, the protagonist repeats his question and asks what happened. Yule's innocent behavior makes the shaken visitor even more nervous because he cannot understand the commander's hidden ability at all today. Sometime later, bright sunlight peacefully illuminates the family's practice grounds as another full day of careful training begins outside. The entire White Wolf squad stands arranged in orderly rows across the center of the family's training ground. Facing the entire squad, Vice Captain Chimu calls out loudly and instructs every squad member to present a formal salute to their commander together. Walking calmly toward his followers, Yule asks whether they received enough rest after the previous assignment. The organized fighters answer with one strong collective response. Approaching the commander, Chimu reminds him that he recently requested a discussion about an important squad matter. Noticing tension in the formation, the protagonist suspects a problem and studies every fighter with an uncertain expression. Yule asks whether the squad remains unhappy with his leadership and whether they want him to resign. This startles the vice captain, who denies it. Trying to avoid responsibility, Tazan and the others begin blaming the vice commander for their earlier disobedience. Chimu immediately turns toward the laughing deserters and firmly orders every one of them to remain quiet. Ignoring his companion's commotion, Chimu adopts a serious, focused expression and directly addresses the genuine reason that every squad member requested this meeting with their leader. Looking at the captain, Chimu admits that their previous mission revealed the full extent of the team's weakness. He confesses that they returned safely only because of the newcomer's power, causing Yule to question the vice commander's true purpose. Joining his pawns in deep respect, the vice commander bows before Yule and asks the powerful warrior to become their instructor, helping every squad member develop significantly greater strength through disciplined training. Following Chimu's example, every White Wolf fighter bows in perfect coordination and loudly repeats the request for the newcomer to accept full responsibility for their future instruction and progress. Moved by the loyalty of these proud fighters, Yule narrows his eyes and considers their desire to improve. Accepting the request from his squad, he agrees to lead their training. However, the captain warns everyone that they must organize themselves and follow every instruction without complaint, prompting an enthusiastic celebration among the excited warriors gathered before him. Wearing a smile nearly as intimidating as those of his former opponents, the captain announces that his training methods will become exceptionally strict, demanding, and difficult for every warrior present. Soon afterward, the squad's strongest fighters cross the yard while carrying enormous stones upon their backs, shouting and sweating heavily as they experience the demanding new training program together. Beneath the hot sun, the squad struggles while supporting enormous stones across their shoulders throughout the exercise. Sitting peacefully while drinking tea, Yule reflects that the body provides the essential foundation for every martial artist. Watching Tassin struggle beneath his stone, Yule observes that certain warriors would need a new body to achieve the ideal physical foundation required for advancement. Despite this limitation, the commander recognizes enormous hidden potential within his exhausted followers today. Considering their determined effort, Yule believes that this demanding foundation creates the proper path for every fighter to eventually reach a higher level. Closing his book calmly, the family man murmurs about the squad's stubborn and determined nature. Hidden in a nearby pavilion, Don watches the training ground and wonders how long he should continue observing this scene. Faced with the unbelievable training display, the council member concludes that those proud fighters have abandoned all judgment. Unable to understand their obedience, Don wonders why squad members accept every difficult part of this training program. At that moment, The troubling memory of his practice contest overwhelms Doan's thoughts and returns the commander's pressure to his mind. From that day forward, the young advisor cannot sleep peacefully because repeated dreams predict humiliation and defeat. Troubled by the mystery, Doan makes a firm decision to investigate the calm scholar's true identity completely by himself in secret. Breaking the serious mood, young Sui runs toward Yule joyfully and calls her father to the center of courtyard nearby. The protagonist lifts his daughter into his arms beside his wife, creating a warm and peaceful family moment before everyone. Watching the warm relationship from a distance, Doan decides that the child appears gentle and discovers a human side within the mysterious scholar he has studied. Leaving sentimental thoughts behind, the observer redirects his attention toward his primary investigative goal carefully. He investigates the unfamiliar scholar during daylight. He becomes disappointed after failing to uncover any secret about his target. Later, the commander finishes his morning reading and closes the book with serenity. Walking toward the exhausted squad upon the ground, Yule praises everyone's effort and admits that they completed the exercise far better than he had expected. He reminds everyone that any individual may freely quit the exercise whenever they choose. However, Yule promises an exceptional reward to every squad member who completes the objective. He sounds serious. The commander promises to grant exactly what they desire most if every warrior continues performing the exercise until complete. Resting upon the ground, Tazan asks whether everyone heard correctly and remarks that the entire squad is far more stubborn than outsiders imagine. Watching from afar, the advisor scratches his head because he cannot understand anything about it. He watches curiously as every exhausted fighter suddenly becomes completely determined immediately after hearing their commander promise them a valuable personal reward. Deep into the night, a disappointed cry echoes through the forest and breaks the silence surrounding them. Walking alone beneath the forest shadows, the commander follows a narrow path located far from the family's compound. Moving quietly, the observer tracks the commander's footprints, retreating through vegetation. The observer promises himself that he will not return to his room that night without uncovering the scholar's secret. The commander stops, then glances behind after sensing an unfamiliar presence approaching nearby. Using the darkness for cover, a hidden attacker leaps from the trees very quickly and prepares to challenge the commander. Following the narrow path, the observer quickens his pace while fearing the mysterious commander might completely disappear from view. Breathless, the advisor considers it impossible that an ordinary teacher could move across terrain quickly. Upon reaching the summit, the observer stops when he sees the stranger standing beneath the moonlight while calmly holding a blade inside the quiet darkness alone. Within a moment, a wave of golden energy shaped like a sword descends from above and fills the hillside with overwhelming spiritual pressure. The powerful wave overwhelms every hidden opponent among the rocks, leaving the observer staring at the display in complete disbelief. Without showing any exhaustion, the warrior turns his blade and prepares another powerful movement immediately nearby. A wave of blue energy crosses the darkness in a sweeping upward motion that sends pressure rushing through sky. The force of the movement pushes away the clouds, reveals the night stars, and illuminates the sky over the quiet mountain summit. Peace immediately returns while the commander remains unharmed atop the mountain summit after completely clearing the surrounding terrain of every remaining threat. Turning gently, Yule displays a peaceful expression while his blade continues radiating the energy produced by countless years of careful training. Falling onto the rocky ground, the observer stammers in disbelief and struggles to understand the incredible display of power that he witnessed earlier. Several days later, the protagonist resumes his peaceful routine and reads a new volume while sitting within the Pang family's courtyard. Interrupting the quiet study, the visitor approaches carefully and gains the commander's attention. He then asks whether the commander was responsible for completely resolving the threat posed by that extraordinary disguised figure who appeared inside the forest during the previous night. The young man bases his distrust on the statement that the team would never be able to defeat that incarnate legend regardless of the antagonist's physical condition. Looking at the intruder, the leader examines the literature and calmly asks whether he might be excessively belittling his own colleagues. The leader points out that the mature advisor trained alongside those warriors and should know well where their power ends. Tired of beating around the bush, the observer demands to learn what the fighter intends to do by concealing so much energy. Frank View, the family leader, reveals that his only goal is to ensure the protection of his partner and his beloved child. Immediately after, it encompasses the security of the great patriarch and the complete legacy they built in that environment. He concludes by including the White Wolf Squad, declaring that he aims to protect all members from external threats. Changing his tone, the fighter gravely warns that he will show no mercy whatsoever to anyone who puts his recent family in danger. Following the leader's resolution, the council member notes that these statements sound entirely true and crystal clear. By such unwavering loyalty, the young man takes an extreme measure and concludes that he has a duty to be close to someone with that profile. In an act of respect, the visitor bows before the stranger and promises to offer his loyalty to him from that date forward. With the group huddled together in the background, The young man cries out for shelter while the commander merely assesses the recent recruit with serenity. The wooden weapon tears through the surroundings with fantastic speed during morning practice. Absolutely focused, the group members alternate vigorous attacks while perspiration covers them during the demanding practice session, quietly observing the scene from a distance. Two council members are astonished to witness the group's determination, wondering if those outlaws had indeed successfully overcome the legendary icon of darkness. The outer observer calmly watches his subordinates applying maximum effort. During exercise, the commander finds all that energy quite stimulating. He recalls that those precise warriors formed the formidable group he knew in his previous existence. Steady resolve. The young men demonstrate a level of strength far beyond ordinary expectations. The troubling vision of their fate crosses the main character's mind, who intensely hopes that this time the outcome will not unfold in that way. As the fighters pick up the pace of hand-to-hand combat, the stranger assesses each movement with total focus, displaying a vision full of determination. The father of the family promises himself that he will ensure the protection of each member there. However, the disorder begins when the giant approaches anxiously, demanding to know what they did wrong for the commander to grant them 2 complete days of uninterrupted rest. Immediately behind him, the other part of the pack plunges into utter alarm, begging the leader not to abandon them so abruptly. Seeking to calm the situation, the leader explains that it is not a punishment, adding that they merely need to rest in order to fully assimilate the instruction. The leader reiterates that pushing the physical structure to its ultimate limit is not the only way to make progress. Using his keen senses, he clearly notices that every squad member has already reached a critical level of physical exhaustion. Acting as captain, the officer orders the giant to stop grumbling and follow the decision, causing him to lower his face in total disappointment before everyone nearby. The dialogue is interrupted by a gentle voice that catches the eye of the nearby leader. Through the rustic partition, the girl exudes charm as her father details how much she begged to accompany him. The team falls apart, fascinated by the tiny image of the girl. Taking a step to the side, the warrior urges the girl to greet the fighters in a gentle manner, abandoning her protective embrace. She performs a graceful curtsy and offers a rather embarrassed greeting towards the boys. The hardened fighters are completely subdued by the girl's gentleness. Bending down on the floor to her level, the fighter exhales contentment and returns the greeting using the softest tone of voice he can muster. However, the child is afraid of the man's size and runs quickly away to take cover behind her father's clothing. His confidence breaks into several pieces when he realizes he has frightened the girl. Shaken, he laments the fact that the child did not feel fear of the imposing and frightening supreme leader, but ran away from him. The commander finds the event captivating and adopts a good-humored tone, joking warmly that the expectation would be for the crowd to shed tears of joy upon encountering the giant, but instead, absolute alarm prevailed. At that moment, she grasps the cloth of her father's garment with her small hands and holds up an immaculate handkerchief. Bright gleaming eyes, the child affectionately pleads with the giant to stop crying. The reaction is definitive and the warrior accepts the handkerchief, crying copiously with joy, showing gratitude for the gesture while the leader finds the event amusing. The entertainment pauses when the successor walks up to the group and directly asks about the cause of such satisfaction in the room. The talented successor commends the group's dedication, explaining rumors that the unit currently clearly represents the character of the whole family. Seeking to maintain modesty, he expresses gratitude for the compliments, but emphasizes that they have a long road ahead. Pleased with the courteous response, the prominent young man shows off in a very friendly manner. Turning toward the stranger, the successor admits that he went to that spot because he needs to ask for a considerable favor, receiving a prompt reply from his relative. Changing the scene, they both walk through a peaceful wooded area while the successor suggests they enjoy some of the open space. Contemplating the organic setting, the boy offers a formal welcome to the young man and expresses gratitude for the excellent performance he has been delivering. Memory emerges in the prodigy's mind, showing his sister and the fighter calmly distributing food during a difficult time. He assures that zeal for the clan already represents a payment beyond what is necessary, wishing that they enjoy long and happy lives within the family. Among the vegetation, the successor expresses interest in the celebrated local village, noting that her sister often spoke about the splendor of that place. In the quiet enclosure, he reflects that this community represented his refuge whenever the external weight became unbearable. He remembers the turbulent date when he rescued citizens from an offensive only to be held responsible by them due to the bandits' fear of retaliation. However, the leader did not lower his head and assured the frightened people that he would bear all the blame for what was about to happen. The story depicts the character overcoming adversity repeatedly until the villagers finally regained their peaceful way of life. Hearing the conclusion of the story, the boy exhales with gratitude and observes that his relative only managed to keep his promise because he continued breathing. Maintaining the pleasant atmosphere, the successor admits that he never had a chance to be grateful to the enigmatic figure who ensured his survival in the forest. The successor confesses that initially he considered the hypothesis insane, but at this moment he has the belief that the disguised savior was his own relative. The head of the household remains completely silent, merely absorbing the young man's precise deductions. Placing a portion of tea, the successor inquires what the true reason was that led the stranger to risk everything in order to protect him that night. Gazing at the steaming drink, he surmises that the solution is far more elementary than it appears. He deduces that he took such action because the prodigal heir was the inaugural individual of that stronghold to welcome the former intellectual as an authentic part of the family. A memory returns as the young man recalls that he expected to see his brother publicly belittled by the others, but instead found him welcomed with complete warmth by every member inside the family hall. His positive memory strengthens the conviction that the fighter concealed his level for a good cause. However, she warns that the situation will become complicated very quickly. By providing full support, the successor ensures that the family will provide all the necessary foundation the moment the commander chooses to display his genuine energy to the world. He finds the offer of support amusing and returns to the question, suggesting that the young man does not yearn to take control and merely seeks to exist free from family obligations. The stranger's expression grows serious as he audibly expresses this genuine and frank yearning for independence. With the vegetation swaying in the breeze, the protagonist confirms his loyalty by stating that he will remain with his brother-in-law simply because they form a united group. From that peaceful enclosure, a large caravan approaches the main entrances of the colossal property at an accelerated pace. Watching the sudden departure, two clan guardians murmur about the arrival of the rejected visitors, fearing the dark legends that surround them. Carrying sturdy crates, the servants consider it an outrage that the supreme leader allowed that formidable rabble upon the blessed family lands. Inside the main room, one of the council members anxiously asks the leader if they will actually be harboring that troublesome group. Settled in his royal chair, the patriarch lets out a laugh and inquires whether the old man persists in his opposition to the presence. Even though he knows of the team's history of misconduct, he warns that such individuals are not conventional thugs, exposing their true nature under the name of the infamous visiting squad of the Martial Alliance. Every member of this team carries a burden through the martial world due to its relentless tactics of domination that produce no evidence. Their reputation was built upon defeated opponents overcoming every kind of adversity that stood directly in the path of the central force. Trembling with fear, the advisor pleads with the commander to reconsider the choice, arguing that authorizing access for that unit represents an unprecedented risk. Ignoring the advisor's desperate pleas, the patriarch merely disregards the warning, maintaining his unbreakable and confident pose. The celebrated warrior's stern gaze clearly demonstrates that he has his own intentions regarding this unusual arrival. Firm, steady footsteps echo across the stone floor, marking the caravan's final entrance into the area. The visiting team advances through the clan's grounds, adopting an extremely arrogant attitude while surveying the property as though they dominated the area. Following the local clan's rules, the reception official bows his head in gratitude for the long journey they have undertaken to reach this territory safely. The family servants bow their heads in a display of utter surrender as the group of fighters walk straight past them. Ignoring them, the visiting squad enters family territory, exuding a dense and savage presence. Walking through the grounds, the captain inquires whether that family is truly all that they seem. The fighter Yan openly criticizes the clan's young heir, calling him mediocre and poorly dressed. In an attempt to lessen this arrogance, another cautious member of the group gently warns his companions that despite their harmless appearance, these are precisely the people who managed to overcome the mythical supreme demon. The visiting fighter publicly rejects the rumors about the fall of that dark legend, calling the entire story completely false. The other fighter firmly orders her to end the pointless debate immediately. The visiting leader surveys the area and notes that this clan also harbors fighters willing to offer lessons. Ignoring the side conversations of his group, he orders everyone to remain silent and continue marching across the courtyard. The child amuses herself by striking an air sphere while a staff member supportively states that there is no harm in making mistakes. Overflowing with vigor, the girl unleashes a powerful energetic glow into the air, revealing her delight. During the evening activity, the arrogant fighter crosses the space, sees the girl, and remarks on how cute the child is before asking about the little one's identity with a delighted smile nearby. The teammate provides feedback, informing that it is the granddaughter of the supreme patriarch of the Pang family. Intrigued by the detail, their leader adopts a cunning expression and decides that greeting the girl would be a nice suggestion. Noticing the arrival of the strangers, the employee stammers nervously and tries to communicate that the great commander is already waiting for them. However, the squad commander completely rejects the request and raises his hand, calling the woman audacious. Without any tolerance, the individual scolds the female worker and dismisses her request, shocking even her group partner with his unacceptable audacity openly. Adjusting his own position, the coward curtly warns that a simple employee has a duty to understand her inferior position in the presence of important visitors. Suddenly, the crimson toy flies with force and lands beside the arrogant commander, completely surprising him in the courtyard nearby. The individual blinks with bewilderment upon experiencing the gentle tap and observes the dropped item. Trying to process the object's origin, grasping the sphere in his hands, the commander examines the childish object, his gaze sharp and utterly serious with visible annoyance. The child stomps heavily on the ground and yells, ordering him to stop the evil deeds. The girl points her finger overflowing with bravery, blaming the visitors for being evil beings for mistreating the housemaid. Indignant at being labeled as bad, the fighter from the visiting team loses her temper and insults the girl, calling her a brat. In a display of utter arrogance, the woman taps the little girl's forehead with one finger, causing her to immediately cry out in startled surprise before everyone nearby. The visitor dismisses the event, declaring that the girl should feel fortunate she had shown restraint because she considered the child too young to endure any further fear and distress in public. The girl breaks into a loud, frightened cry in the center of the open area. Suddenly, a monstrously dark shape surrounds the foreign fighter who turns her bewildered face, experiencing a sinister aura on her back. With anger, the giant warrior raises his terrifying figure and demands justification regarding what that disrespectful visitor plans to do with the girl now. Turning her attention to the warrior, the commander inquires, ironically, about who the intruder might be and questions whether this is how the clan receives its visitors. Taking a step back, the White Wolf fighter coldly replies that they only host visitors with consideration when those visitors adopt such a stance. Taking on the conflict, the other member of the outsider group steps forward, challenging the giant to a genuine battle. The tense atmosphere is broken by the sound of applause from the leader, who seeks to ease tension before the fight escalates further outside. Maintaining a conciliatory facade, he claims that it is pointless to inflame such a petty misunderstanding and orders his group to retreat. However, the vice commander emerges, exuding an overwhelming desire for conflict, demanding justification for the fact that they attacked the clan's family. Identifying the renowned squadron, the commander of the visitors resorts to extreme hypocrisy in order to apologize for not having realized the target of his dialogue. Seeking to alleviate the situation, the leader proposes to provide justifications in the future. However, he suggests resolving the dispute right there and then through a classic method. Adopting a confrontational stance, he proposes a friendly battle between the groups in order to purify pride. Inside his head, the visiting leader recalls the rumors about the White Wolf having overcome the legendary demon and feels his anger rise. The commander now realizes that the scene boils down to a clear trap, but his vanity screams louder than caution. The vice commander inwardly admits that she would never give up that duel, especially before her foreign commander, who is currently gently comforting the young girl nearby. Grinding his teeth resolutely, the swordsman accepts the insult without a second thought. With his palm positioned on the blade, the acting commander of the family seals the duel and announces that the clash will take place. From the courtyard in the majestic main hall, the young successor asks his father if he doesn't harbor the slightest unease regarding the foreign presence. Consuming the tea peacefully, the great leader laughs at the question and assures that there is no reason to be alarmed by such unwelcome guests. Considering the patriarch to be overly optimistic, the talented young man suspects that the commander has some hidden purpose in granting access to that squad. Praising the heir's perspicacity, the old man notes that there is no need for him to understand the details at the moment. However, the dialogue is interrupted by a lackey. The watchman enters the premises, terrified, struggling for breath to describe the commotion that has just broken out outside. After hearing the news, the family leader strikes the furniture with such force that he breaks the material completely in anger before everyone. Consumed by anger, the Supreme Commander says that the troublesome visitors had the audacity to bother the household workers outside today. The man's fury reaches its peak when he realizes that the rabble had the audacity to upset his beloved granddaughter. Beyond limits, the leader rises, demanding to walk to the area immediately to confront those responsible using his own authority. Terrified by the idea of open diplomatic battle, the young heir pleads with the patriarch to back down and warns that he will seek to resolve the event primarily through diplomacy. Having calmed the old man in the room, the brilliant young man hastily departs, abandoning the commander, panting with anger in his seat. Isolated in his surroundings, the patriarch continues in a state of inner turmoil, vowing to impose a serious consequence on whoever dared to upset his family. In the open sun-drenched space, the commander proposes that the clash take place in the format of single fights, a suggestion accepted by the vice commander. He advances, assuming leadership with overflowing confidence, demanding to know who will become the first enemy to cross his path. At the opposite extreme, the visiting fighter walks wielding his blade, vowing to use little force in the confrontation. With the clan giant, combatants settle down a few meters apart, judging each other's energy levels in complete stillness. Following the ceremonial norm of combat, the foreign fighter performs a courteous bow prior to the start of the physical confrontation. Maintaining the same amount of obligatory courtesy, he raises his clenched hands and announces that the contest will now begin. Swift movement, he swings the blade with maximum power. However, the giant blocks the powerful impact using his arm shields. Powerful impact generates a pulse of energy that lifts the pole into the air. This demonstrates that none of those involved are holding back their own strength. Experiencing the target's unreal durability, the visitor is left utterly astonished by the warrior's firmness. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the White Wolf member uses pure strength to counter the attack and throw his opponent far away. Sliding across the rocky floor, the faction fighter curses the situation, experiencing the sensation of having just collided headfirst with a rock formation. They embarrass themselves before everyone. The commander assesses the situation and orders him to stop the jokes and duel for real. Exuding an atmosphere of high expectations, the commander warns that failure under those conditions would tarnish the honor of the entire martial alliance. Understanding the intimidation, the fighter grips his weapon with all his might, vowing not to disappoint, quickly requests a pardon and departs again, altering his stance completely to employ a substantially more powerful method. In an intense cadence, the visitor attacks, brandishing a sword laden with focused intent. A wave of red force plunges down, sweeping through the atmosphere, revealing the genuine power of the Alliance's elite fighters. In the final millisecond, he notices in panic that the blow is focused on a vulnerable target devoid of any shame. The sword strikes the armor with force, and the sound of the collision echoes across the terrain as the situation slips out of control. The giant receives a hard strike in the center of his armor, experiencing the enormous force of that surprising attack that pushed through his defense. Terrified by the treachery in a training contest, the officer and fellow squad members nearby frantically rush forward to try and intervene. Shouting in support of their comrade, the clan's fighters watch helplessly as the big man falls prostrate belly up onto the rocky ground. Angered, the vice commander grabs the disrespectful fellow by his clothes, criticizing the unfairness of focusing on a vulnerable area during a mere exercise. Seeing the desperation of her opponents, the foreign fighter orders them to stop shouting and making a spectacle over a minor matter. Pretending to be a mediator, the commander orders the woman to remain silent, then offers an apology filled with hypocrisy and devoid of genuine feeling toward the young foreigner standing nearby. The cowardly leader mocks him with contempt, pointing out that the setback did not result in disaster, thus testing the commander's steady composure. Absolutely outraged, the vice captain inquires about the audacity of the rival commander, criticizing the unfairness of that disloyal attack in the open environment of the clan. With a sly smile, the commander suggests they prolong the confrontation, joking that he apologized for using a low blow. Amused by the scene, the antagonist ridicules the vulnerability of the local team, highlighting that they will very rarely have another opportunity to experience the place in such a pleasant way. Shaking with pure rage, the swordsman criticizes the lack of consideration from those individuals, noting the level of insanity of the opposing squad. However, tension dissipates the moment the commander steps forward with a grand gesture, accepting the duel with an air of calm, disregarding the lackey's distress. The foreign captain agrees that since the visitors have traveled a long distance, the ideal course of action is to continue the fight right there. Taking responsibility for the moment, the protagonist formally introduces himself as leader of the White Wolf Squad and receives a carefully polite greeting from the visiting commander nearby. Still maintaining his irritating arrogance, the visiting squad commander considers the offer quite curious but decides that the rules of that entertainment needed to be changed. Taking a confrontational stance, he maliciously proposes that they engage in a game of endurance to determine who truly governs the space. Displaying a smile, the commander agrees to the plan and warns in an extremely discreet manner that he has begun to understand the fundamentals of hand-to-hand combat. Experiencing utter offense at the unrealistic modesty, the visitor immediately accepts the insult, believing himself to be the target of ridicule by the novice. Removing his sword from its sheath with great resolve, the cowardly fellow announces the resumption of friendly combat through a rather bold approach. Settled in the center of the brightly lit room, the two leaders stare at each other with a tense atmosphere, patiently awaiting the first attack in the duel. Wasting a single instant, the antagonist fires like lightning at the stone base, shrinking the space while striking a rather powerful and threatening pose. Surprising his confident rival, he blocks the powerful blow with absurd ease, relying solely on his worn training blade. Due to the perfection of the defensive impact, the commander of the visiting squad is thrown forcefully backward, losing his balance in midair. Against the backdrop of this surreal scene, the members of the foreign squad fall into a complete stupor, unable to comprehend how the robust leader was ultimately defeated. Sporting a dark, confident smile, the protagonist positions his amateur tool, fearlessly challenging the next candidate, landing with extreme difficulty. The villain voices complaints in frustration, noting the displeasure of having underestimated his rival. Within his troubled mind, the coward concludes that the intellectual concealed his abilities all along solely to orchestrate a profound humiliation. Irritated by the early fall, the commander yells rudely, ordering his subordinate to charge forward without delay, reminding them that the opposing captain is still waiting for them. The visiting fighter hesitates briefly and warns about the peculiar presence emanating from the target directly ahead. However, the warning is ignored. He burns with anger because his squadron displays such obvious timidity. The leader insults his companions, labeling them worthless for cowardly retreating at a critical moment. Walking toward the renewed duel, he boasts of representing the greatest prodigy educated by the Martial Alliance, assuring that the element of surprise has definitively ended. Adopting a noticeably more focused martial stance, the antagonist coldly tells the foreigner to act with caution in the face of the strength of his blade from now. Dismissing the empty insult, the family leader uses sarcasm, suggesting that people lacking experience often develop the habit of behaving with exactly this arrogance openly. Consumed by senseless anger, the commander advances, brandishing his gleaming tool, vowing to embarrass the audacious man right in the middle of the field today. Witnessing the powerful attack, the White Wolf's second-in-command's eyes widen, confirming the genuine risk involved in that serious confrontation. The swordsman explains in alarm that this is an exceptional strike taught directly through an ancient defense, which clearly confirms the seriousness of the challenge ahead. Consumed by concern, the officer realizes with alarm that despite the arrogance of young man, this opposing commander does not qualify as an enemy with whom the chief can duel in an uncompromising manner. Using his maximum acquired skill, the remarkable young man launches a fast and exceptionally powerful straight-line attack. A storm of brilliant attacks covers the landscape, pushing the pace of the fight to its peak within a relentless routine nearby. Maintaining a focused composure despite the strain, the main character uses his simple training sword to intercept each move with exact accuracy. Slipping after missing the strong moves, the antagonist exhales outrage, noting the surprising ease with which the opponent escaped completely unharmed. Refusing to embrace the impending disaster, he gains momentum by breaking the rocky ground and attacks again using a different strategy. A colossal blue energy emerges. A concentrated energy wave aims to overwhelm the persistent rival using powerful energy and deceptive tricks. Summoning an exceptionally formidable skill, a tear-inducing energy surges from the heights, aiming squarely at the position of the composed captain. A thunderous collision sends smoke across the area, yet the stranger's resolute pose remains perfectly rigid in the center of the stream. With a smooth, spontaneous gesture, the commander redirects the powerful blow sideways, dispersing the bestial energy without making the slightest apparent effort. Caught completely off guard by the impeccable protection, the commander reacts with disbelief as he witnesses his ultimate attack being cancelled in such a deeply humiliating way. The coward's reasoning collapses because he expected to see his opponent crawling on the floor, desperately begging for mercy before everyone. Completely irrational and rejecting the harsh truth, the opposing commander shouts in frustration and launches into another directionless and illogical attack. Breaking through the antagonist's irrational rage, the commander displays a grim smile and announces in a menacing tone that the chance to have some fun had finally begun. A pure chill runs down the Alliance fighter's spine as he realizes too late the serious danger contained in that thoughtless action before him. By a genuinely overwhelming pressure, the family leader adjusts his mock weapon in the shadows, bringing light to the terrain with focused force, directing his rival's fury straight into his eyes. The commander is left completely paralyzed by sudden fear, experiencing his very essence freezing. His eyes widen in complete alarm as his composure fails him at the prospect of a terrible humiliation. A giant straight shot powerfully pierces the landscape, striking directly through the center of the vulnerable figure of the false great exponent. Seems to suddenly stop at the moment when the individual merely lowers his discolored face, failing to mount the slightest defensive energy in his lower limbs and displaying the shattered spirit of a fighter. The fearful man collapses to his knees on the stony ground, completely defeated. Humiliation overwhelms the foreign commander, surrendering to a ridiculous outcome and falling defeated before the eyes of every individual positioned there. Witnessing the overwhelming triumph taking shape, the White Wolf Squad erupts in a shower of applause and shouts of euphoria, celebrating the splendor of their leader. The officer arrives, exuding relief and praising the brilliant execution, while the main character returns the compliment by questioning the condition of his squad. Gracefully through the exercise area, the talented young man of the family lets out a laugh, confessing that only he possessed the secrets of his brother. Knowing his hidden secrets, overflowing with calmness and contagious pride, the partner rushes to embrace her husband. She congratulates him on the speed of his triumph, making the fighter embarrassed. The couple's tender intertwining definitively ends that pointless pressure, revealing the deep love built between them. Witnessing the united group and their lackey celebrating, the commander takes a deep breath, enjoying the peaceful conscience of having offered a good moral lesson. Upon the rough stony ground, the defeated antagonist lets out a sigh full of disappointment, acting urgently to recover a fraction of his remaining pride. The foreign fighters rush frantically to help their fallen commander, while he lets out a stifled roar born of extreme disappointment. Consumed by a dark rage and troubled pride, the fearful man vows inwardly that he will never accept such a humiliating defeat without returning the blow. In a state of shock at the commotion, the fighter from the Central Force proposes that they disappear from the scene immediately despite having just joined the pompous clan. Seeking to behave more prudently, the partner suggests that it would be wise to rest from the exhaustion resulting from the long trip before undertaking any escapade. The defeated commander's gaze shrinks through a mixture of insanity and sorrow, completely disregarding the reasonable precautions of his crew. Driven by boundless anger, the fearful figure vents his enormous resentment by harshly scolding his own subordinate who was trying to protect him from embarrassment. Staring at his companion lying on the wooden floor, the antagonist calculatingly intimidates anyone who dares to defy his directives once more. Possessed by the absolute madness of the situation, he stipulates, adopting an insane stance, that he will remove anyone who hesitates to silently comply. Dense silence takes over the darkened corridors as soon as the sturdy door slams shut, signaling the start of departure for that unwelcome entourage. Protected by the darkness of the cold night, the expendable band of the Alliance flees fearfully from the Pang family's possessions without uttering a single farewell. Positioned with his arms resting on the top of a building, the stranger watches from afar every step of that hasty and wordless departure. With their clothes gently billowing in the night breeze, the captain certifies that their journey outwards is irrevocable and free from further disturbances. The expansive landscape of the fortified area under the lights imposes a contrast with the heavy atmosphere of the small group making their way through the icy mountains. Sporting a calm smile on his face, the head of the family experiences a vast relief at finally cleansing the environment of such a repulsive figure. Dark forest quickly swallows up the defeated group, sealing the humiliating outcome of that diplomatic meeting rife with hidden agendas. The commander's vision unequivocally demonstrates that despite his apparent tranquility, he will remain eternally alert, aiming to eliminate any dirt that arises. Moving swiftly through the woods in utter alarm, the distraught head of the foreign commander boils with horror, evoking the overwhelming energy of the audacious. He recalls that although he had been restricted to 1,000, he succeeded in proving the bitterness of his own confinement in the face of that dreadful blow. The memory of the stranger's unbreakable pose torments his thoughts, making him experience the feeling of being utterly useless trash. With grief, the fearful man struggles to regain his composure by tightening his clenched fist, and resolves that he simply needs to never again cross paths with that monstrous being. To the clan, the commander observes the night sky illuminated by constellations and smiles, extremely pleased with the positive destiny that awaits him. Far from the property, the foreign fighter's escape comes to an abrupt halt when spheres roll across the ground near everyone's planted feet. At that precise moment, the father of the family senses a strange change in the wind and turns his face away, quite fearful of the danger. The forest landscape is thrown into chaos as the balls explode, releasing dense smoke, forcing the warrior to shout in alarm for everyone to move backward. As the purplish dust settles, the organization's rabble, illuminated by the moonlight, realizes that they have been completely surrounded by a group of mysterious silhouettes. Taking the lead in the siege, the commander of the intruders reveals a menacing look across his concealed face and confirms that he has finally stumbled upon the visiting squadron. Affected by the dust, the fugitive's vision widens as he spots the sinister skull mark on those clothes. Overwhelmed by alarm due to the trap, he hesitates, wondering why the mysterious demon cult scouting team is occupying that space. The formidable antagonist sarcastically comments on the group's courtesy in abandoning the fortification, so quickly praising the obscuring fog for having performed its mission of containing them very well. Experiencing the paralyzing effects of the substance on his inner power, the defeated prodigy sweats, profusely attempting to devise a desperate escape plan. Nearby, his companion falls into a stupor, uttering the cult's label with horror at the danger before them. Without hesitation, the commander turns away and runs in fear through the vegetation. He ignores his colleagues' shouts for his return. The companion's plea stops suddenly when a swift movement removes him from the confrontation during a surprising approach from behind nearby. Today, the young man falls to the ground, causing the woman to scream in panic as the stranger mocks the organization's supposedly superior strength before then. Camouflaged on the back of a thick tree trunk, the cowardly commander watches the outcome and deduces that those sectarians undoubtedly appeared aiming to collect something of extreme importance. Consumed by personal greed, He vows to himself that he must preserve his existence without regard for cost, even if it results in him being the sole survivor of that horrific scenario. Cornered by her opponents, the fighter demands to uncover the intentions of those people towards them, listening to ironic flattery from the old man about her clever mental agility. The sect member imperiously determines that he will preserve only one individual in order to leak secret data, turning the survivor into a spy under their absolute command. He clarifies in an impersonal way that the target will receive a physical mark and will need to ingest a dominating substance that creates absolute loyalty for eternity. Trembling with horror at the imminent ruin, the woman hesitates slightly before accepting the humiliating offer aimed at saving her own neck. At this moment, the cowardly man leaps from his hiding place, displaying a repugnant grin, formally assuming the role of the legitimate commander of that squad. Without the slightest trace of character, he shoves his collie, wildly vowing to prove himself a far superior infiltrator to her. Such treachery seems completely splendid. The elder raises a finger, calmly communicating that he only possesses a minimum requirement to sign the pledge. To the frightened girl, the sectarian demands that the boy betray his own colleague on the spot to demonstrate his loyalty, leaving the worried fugitive behind. Laughing strangely, the individual accepts the condition without the slightest hesitation, stating that he already plans to abandon her regardless of the pact. Revolted by the despicable behavior, the fighter criticizes the former leader, calling him scum, and yells that he will be consumed in the underworld because of his betrayals. The echo of a swift attack reverberates through the frozen forest, silencing the complaints and irrevocably suppressing the final obstacle in the path of the overbearing antagonist. Enraptured by the scene, the man rests a hand upon him and congratulates the recruit for the act, naming him a capable recruit. With an imposing posture, the antagonist celebrates the recruitment of his new partner into his dreadful division and decrees that he must prove his worth from this very moment forward. Stained by the treachery he committed, the traitor welcomes the decision with a sickly smile, vowing complete loyalty to the new administration. However, the fugitive's smug pose melts away in a fraction of a second as soon as he detects an utterly unreal commotion nearby. Ahead, the shadows become illuminated by crimson light. The sovereign silhouette of the foreign captain suddenly bursts forth with the aim of ruining the celebration of the cowards. The coward's eyes widen fearfully while shock paralyzes every fiber of his weakened body upon recognizing the formidable creature standing nearby. A powerful invisible offensive from the commander sweeps through the forest environment, overwhelming the sectarian band with one precise and swift maneuver. The family man lands with a light movement and laments the antagonist's decision, emphasizing that such weakness perfectly reflected the scenario he had envisioned before. Illuminated by the soft moonlight, the protagonist declares with coldness that the individual's final path would be quite different if he maintained his righteousness until the end. Terrified on the ground, the remaining man now sheds shameful tears, trying desperately to defend himself by saying that he only committed that mistake because he needed to stay alive. The fighter remembers his previous existence, recalling that this nobleman of the organization also betrayed his companions and carried out countless misdeeds within the Sect command structure. Looking back at the current situation, the hero admits, exuding peace, that he genuinely nurtured hopes that the young man would embrace a different path this time. Releasing his tool into the environment, the leader determines in a tone that each individual must bear the consequences of his resolutions. His tool falls with millimetric precision, categorically closing the door on the experience of that presumptuous residue once and for all. Observing the terrain covered with fallen figures, the foreigner concludes that the ideal narrative to spread in this context is one of joint confrontation mutually generated by both sides. A serene voice supports the brilliant strategy, and the extraordinarily talented young man from the family emerges walking unhurriedly through the woods under the night sky. The successor corroborates the alibi of the shared confrontation aimed at preventing the complicated rival group from rising to the level of legends of bravery in the locality. The commander openly hates providing false fame to that bunch of bad people. However, he admits that the real facts would push the honor of the central organization into a dangerous abyss. Gazing at the antagonist in a humiliating defeat, the leader mocks the scene, questioning the value of preserving pride when dealing with individuals who have migrated to the world of the lost. Hearing his brother-in-law's wise words, the commander nods slowly, but soon a question enters his mind. He secretly inquires how the foreigner managed to foresee that exact division of the sinister sect would appear precisely in that space in the middle of the night. Furthermore, the young man is curious about how the protagonist became so certain of the squadron's swift betrayal of the organization, aiming to fall into the sect trap. Watching the rigid pose of his familiar figure moving through the darkness, the young successor wonders to himself what kind of mind-boggling history this captivating individual is carrying with him. Far from the verdant mountain ranges, inside a refined and considerably dark room, the sharp sound of a paintbrush breaks through the heavy silence. A sovereign commander perched in his royal chair demands validation of the bizarre information while the crouching lackey stammers while showing utter alarm within the space. The veteran displaying a cold, detached tone questions whether there is any factual basis to the defeat of his elite by teenagers lacking experience within the rival organization. With hatred over the unsolvable ruins, the shadowy master grumbles, declaring such an abrupt calamity befalling the group unacceptable. Rising from the furniture in a rude manner, the man shouts, pointing out that the whole scene was transforming into a chaotic mess, hindering his plans. To vent his overwhelming dissatisfaction, he extends his arm covered with dark energy and begins restraining the unprotected messenger from a distance. Restraining force from the compression overwhelms the messenger in a fraction of a second, revealing the harsh authority displayed by the commander of the shadows nearby. The exhausted emissary collapses noisily onto the darkened floor of the enclosure, proving serious consequences for those who bring bitter agendas into that environment without warning. Settling once more into his armchair of authority, the commander crunches his mouth and perfectly deduces that without a doubt an extraordinary event has unfolded far from a simple stalemate in the aforementioned woods. Striking a glorious and imposing pose, the cult leader crosses his arms, entreat and yearning to uncover the true mysterious entity responsible for completely disrupting his highest ranking.